Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 3 of What If Sonic and his friends were in Remnant. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Dark Jaundice. It was time for combat class, currently overseen by Glinda Goodwitch, where students would take turns to spar against one another, be it one-on-one matches, team battles, or on the rare occasion of a team facing off against one opponent. Currently, it appeared to be a one-on-one spar between John and Cardin Winchester, and so far, it did not appear to be going in John's favor, as he already appeared greatly exhausted while Cardin didn't seem to have even broken a sweat, evident by his chuckle as he held his mace, the executioner, over his shoulder. Come on, John muttered to himself as he picked up Crocia Morse once again and charged Cardin with a battle cry. But Cardin easily dodged the vertical slice to strike John with his mace and send him flying across the ground. Though John was quick to pick himself up, having dropped his shield to grip his sword with both hands and go on the attack again, but Cardin blocked it rather easily. This is the part where you lose, Cardin told him. Over my dead, John was cut off as Cardin drove his knee into his gut, causing him to keel over. Cardin raised his mace to finish him off, but the sound of the buzzer stopped the match. That's enough. Glinda stepped forward, revealing the status on each combatant's aura via holographic screens above them. Students, as you can see, Mr. Ark's aura has now dropped into the red. In a tournament-style duel, this would indicate that John is no longer fair for battle, and that the official may call the match. She then addressed John directly. Mr. Ark, it's been weeks now, please try to refer to your scroll during combat. Gauging your aura will help decide when it is appropriate to attack, or when it is better to move to a more defensive strategy. John gave a sigh, sparing a glance towards Pyrrha, as well as Team RWBY, who also attended the same class with the other students present, Pyrrha looking the most concerned for him. We wouldn't want you to be gobbled up by a Beowulf now, would we? Glinda told him. Speak for yourself, Cardin muttered as he picked up the executioner and proceeded to step off the arena. Remember everyone, the Vital Festival is only a few months away. Glinda addressed the students again. This got all the students, especially Team RWBY, excited. It won't be long before students from the other kingdoms start arriving in Vale, so keep practicing. Those who choose to compete in the combat tournament will be representing all of Vale. The bell then rang, signaling the end of the class and allowing the students to pick up and leave, all except John, who could only hang his head at his own poor performance. Meanwhile, Team Sonic had saw the whole thing from the ceiling, and outside the view of most of the students. That tournament sounds like it could be fun. Sonic smirked. Sonic, you do know that's for the students only. Amy told him. Yeah, it would be unfair if we went into it, Sonic said. But, who's to say we can't have Ozpin pull some strings and have us do an exhibition match with some pro huntsmen? That could be fun. I think I could get behind that at least. Amy seemed to like that idea. What do you guys think? She asked Knuckles and Tails, though they didn't answer as they seemed deep in thought over what they had just seen. Hello. Earth to the Fox and Echidna. Sonic got their attention. Sorry. Tails apologized. It's just, that whole fight. Yeah, I don't think John really knows what he's doing, Knuckles said. A lot of those attacks were that of an amateur. I get that some of the kids here are more talented than others, heck we know a few of them, but him. Either he had poor training, or none at all. I see your point. Even Sonic had to admit that John's combat finesse was rather poor, at least compared to the rest of his team as well as RWBY. But, maybe he's a late bloomer. He doesn't even seem to use his semblance like the others, Knuckles said. I honestly don't think he has a semblance, Tails added. Back in the Emerald Forest, he didn't even seem to know about aura. Pyrrha had to help him unlock it. Exactly, Knuckles nodded. I know I said that I get why these Huntsman Academies exist and I've seen that these kids can handle themselves, but it seems like John's bitten off more than he can chew. You guys might be right, Amy admitted. Well, maybe we can help him out, Sonic suggested. Nothing wrong with a friend giving a hand, right? Yeah, maybe. Tails accepted the idea as even Knuckles and Amy nodded in agreement. But there was something else about John's situation that caught Tails' attention. And that was the fact that he was the frequent target of Cardin's bullying. Something Tails could relate to. There we were, in the middle of the night. Nora began her story in dramatic fashion, telling it to the rest of Team JNPR, Team RWBY, and Team Sonic. Even Rouge was present as they all sat together for lunch in the cafeteria. If any of the other students asked, they were Faunus. Seemed to work as nobody else questioned it. It was day. Ren corrected. We were surrounded by Ursai. Nora continued, with Yang, Sonic, Amy, Rouge, and even Knuckles listening intently. While Blake seemed more interested in reading her book, Weiss was filing her nails and not even paying attention. John didn't seem to be paying attention to anything, just depressingly picking at his food, much to the concern of RWBY, Tails, and Pyrrha. They were Beowulfs. Ren corrected once again. Dozens of them, Nora exclaimed. 2 of them, Ren said yet again, but they were no match. And in the end, Ren and I took them down and made a boatload of lean selling Ursa-skinned rugs. Nora finished proudly. I'm calling your bluff on that last part. Knuckles said to her, how can you sell the skin of a Grimm if they disintegrate completely upon death? Killjoy. Nora stuck her tongue out at the red echidna. I hear ya, sister. Guy has no idea how to have fun. Rouge agreed, causing Knuckles to roll his eyes. Speaking of which, where's the Hedgehog and Robot Boy? Yang asked. Shadow's not exactly the sociable type. He's probably off somewhere, maybe practicing with his new weapon. Sonic answered. And Omega's in the Emerald Forest, testing dust ammo against the Grimm there. 2 Beowulfs were blasted through the trees by an explosion of fire, courtesy of E-123 Omega using fire dust ammo in his machine guns. Another test complete. Omega summed up aloud. Fire dust can be used for short-ranged explosive means. 1 round will suffice for clearing large crowds of enemies. The robot then turned around at the sound of a growl as an Ursa made its way through the trees and straight toward the former Badnik. Omega wasn't concerned as he opened a compartment in his arm and fired a condensed beam of lightning that blasted a hole clear through the Ursa's chest, killing it in an instant as it dropped and disintegrated. Lightning dust appears to be best suited for long-ranged attacks. Omega continued, particularly when condensed into a single beam. He then turned toward the side as he saw a Borbatusk come onto the scene. It rolled up to prepare for an attack identical to a spin dash, something Omega was well too familiar with. Before it had the chance to charge, Omega fired some glowing blue rounds around it, causing large clusters of ice to appear around the Grimm, piercing and trapping it in that one spot. Ice dust would be best used in entrapping enemies rather than instant kill attacks. Omega said. Perhaps with fine tuning, it could be used for armor-piercing rounds. Although, chances of ice-piercing metallic frames are low, depending on the quality of the metal. He finished off the struggling Borbatusk with a round of fire dust for explosive results. A Beowulf had attempted to sneak and attack Omega from behind, but he quickly grabbed the Grimm with one arm and used his superior strength to pin the struggling beast to the ground. Eggman's violation of space-time has granted me the means to utilize more destructive capabilities than before. I will thank him in our next encounter. I will thank him with fire. He used his own personal flamethrower in his free hand to then incinerate the Beowulf. Yeah, to be honest, I actually kinda feel sorry for the Grimm. Sonic joked. So, you got a new weapon, Rouge? Yang asked. Yep. The former jewel thief presented a pair of purple heart-shaped objects, each producing a pair of short blades shaped like bat wings. These babies function as boomerangs as well as short blades if I need close quarters combat. But if things get really serious, she brought the heart pieces together, attaching them, which caused the blades to merge together and transform into a large broadsword, also bearing the shape of a batwing. I call this sweet baby, Purple Hearts. Awesome. Yang grinned with approval. So cool. Nora beamed. Very impressive. Ren also approved. You wouldn't have happened to have built that weapon with items that you may have stolen, right? Weiss asked with a slight glare. No. Rouge put her weapon away and pulled out a nail file. I built it with stuff from the weapons shop here that Old Oz let us use. Weiss couldn't help but draw her attention to the nail file Rouge was using. It looked just like. Her eyes suddenly widened as she felt in her pocket that her own nail file was gone, and was currently in the hands of the anthropomorphic bat, smirking knowingly at the heiress. I said I didn't steal the stuff to make my weapon. Rouge told her. Give me that. Weiss snatched it back. Most of the group together laughed, all except for John, who continued to absent-mindedly pick at his food. "John, are you okay?" Kira tried to get his attention. It didn't seem to work at first, that is until Tails, who had been sitting next to him, nudged his arm. "Huh, what? Oh, yeah, why? It's just that you seem a little not okay," RWBY said. "Yeah, you're definitely not okay, man," Sonic told him. John saw that nearly everyone around him was giving him concerned expressions, and he tried to put on a brave face. "Guys, I'm fine. Seriously. Look." He gave a thumbs up and a forced smile. "You're not convincing anyone," Tails said. "We all know that Cardin's been picking on you since the beginning." "Huh, Cardin Winchester." John tried to divert it. "Yeah, tall guy, likes to show off his muscles, total meathead," Rouge answered. "Nah, he just likes to mess around, ya know. Practical jokes." John still tried to dodge it. "He's a bully," RWBY said bluntly. "Him and his whole team," Amy added. "Oh, please, name one time where he's bullied me," John said. "He knocks down all your stuff when you pass by in the halls," Ren answered. "There was also the time he put up your shield and got you stuck in the doorway," Nora answered. "And that one time he shoved you into your locker and launched it," Even Yang added. "I had to run out and get you out of that thing," Sonic recalled. "John, you can ask us if you need help," Tails offered. "That's what friends do." "Guys, really, it's fine," John tried to insist. "Besides, it's not like he's only a jerk to me. He's a jerk to everyone." "Ow, that hurts." They turned to see Cardin and his whole team harassing a female Faunus student with rabbit ears, pulling on them and laughing the whole time. "Please, stop," she tried. "I told you guys it was real." Cardin laughed to his team. Needless to say, everyone in RWBY, JNPR, and Team Sonic looked less than pleased. "Wow, they make the hooligans look like class acts," Sonic said in annoyance. Knuckles stood up from his spot. "Excuse me 1 second, I'm gonna go break those guys in half." "I'm right behind you." Yang also stood up. "Me too." Amy already pulled out her hammer. "Let's go break their legs." Nora cheered. "Hang on, I can do one better." Sonic smirked before vanishing in the form of a blue blur, one that zipped all around Team CRDL, out of the cafeteria briefly and back to his seat. Before anyone could ask what he did. "What the hell?" Cardin looked down and found that his pants had vanished, exposing his boxers. And it wasn't just him, his whole team had their pants missing, showing their underwear to everyone. "Where are my pants?" A whistle caught their attention, turning toward Sonic, who smirked as he gestured with his thumb to the nearest window, where they could see all their pants hanging from a nearby lamp post, waving in the wind like flags on a flagpole. The entire cafeteria had already erupted into a roar of laughter as Team CRDL ran out to try and retrieve their lost clothing, while the rabbit girl had shielded her eyes as her face turned red. Yang, Tails, Nora, Amy, and RWBY had also burst into laughter, the blonde slamming her fist on the table repeatedly while Rouge chuckled and shook her head. Even Knuckles couldn't help but smirk along with Blake and Ren, though Weiss just rolled her eyes slightly. Kira gave Sonic a nod of approval while John just looked shocked. Okay, that was too good," Yang said in between laughs. "Yeah, it was, wasn't it?" Sonic then looked to the rabbit girl. "Hey, why don't you come sit with us?" he offered as he moved over slightly to give room. The girl walked over and sat down with her food. Was that you?" she asked. "Yep," Sonic confirmed. "Thank you. It's Velvet, right?" RWBY asked. "Yes," she confirmed. "Is this all right, me sitting with all of you?" "It's fine, don't worry about it," RWBY assured. "Sorry about what happened to you." "I'm used to it." Velvet looked away slightly with a sad expression, something that Blake noticed as she scowled inwardly. "See, John, standing up to jerks isn't all that hard," Sonic told him. "Yeah, well, some of us don't have super speed," John replied somewhat harshly. "You still have 2 fists and feet. Both are natural weapons," Knuckles pointed out. "I suggest next time you see him, strike him in the groin. It is the weakest spot, particularly for males." "Yeah, hit him in the groin," Nora cheered. "Guys, it's fine. Don't worry about it." John still insisted as he stood up with his tray and walked away, much to the group's concern, particularly Tails and Pyrrha as they shared eye contact with one another. Later in the afternoon, John attended Oobleck's history class along with many of his friends and teammates, as well as Cardin. However, it seems the young man has fallen asleep somewhere in the middle of the professor's lecture. Yes, well prior to the Faunus Rights Revolution, or more popularly known as the Faunus War, humankind was quite adamant about centralizing Faunus population in menagerie. The professor explained to his class, a large map of Remnant displayed behind him with multiple papers attached to it and connected by red wiring. The professor took a sip of his coffee before speeding along with his lecture. Now, while this must feel like ancient history to many of you, it is imperative to remember that these are relatively recent events. Why the repercussions of the uprising can still be seen to this day. Oobleck said as he continued to zip around his class while drinking his coffee. Now, have any among you been subjugated or discriminated against because of your Faunus heritage? A couple of his students did raise their hands, including Velvet, who also attended the same class. Dreadful, simply dreadful. Remember students, it is precisely this kind of ignorance that breeds violence. Oobleck continued, taking yet another sip of his coffee. I mean, just look at what happened to the White Fang. Now, which one of you young scholars can tell me what many theorists believe to be the turning point in the third year of the war? Weiss raised her hand. The battle at Fort Castle. Precisely. Oobleck responded. And, who can tell me the advantage the Faunus had over General Lagoon's forces? Cardin, who hadn't been paying attention at all, flicked a folded piece of paper onto John's head to wake him up. Hey, Mr. Ark, finally contributing to class. Oobleck zoomed in front of him. This is excellent. Excellent. What is the answer? John was drawing a blank. The answer, the advantage of the Faunus had, he heard a subtle cough, glancing past Oobleck to Pyrrha, who pointed toward her eyes. Over that guy's stuff. She made a circular gesture with her hands around her eyes, which he clearly misinterpreted. Binoculars. Nearly everyone in class either laughed, particularly Cardin, or shook their heads, while Pyrrha couldn't help but smack her own forehead. Very funny, Mr. Ark. Oobleck said sarcastically as he zoomed back to his desk, sipping his coffee again. Cardin, perhaps you would care to share your thoughts on the subject. He told the student who laughed the loudest. Well, I know it's a lot easier to train an animal than a soldier. Cardin said, causing Oobleck to shake his head. You're not the most open-minded of individuals, are you, Cardin? Pyrrha narrowed her eyes at him. What, you got a problem? He questioned. No, I have the answer. It's night vision, Pyrrha said for the class. Many Faunus are known to have nearly perfect sight in the dark. General Lagoon was inexperienced and made the mistake of trying to ambush the Faunus in their sleep. Blake added. His massive army was outmatched, and the general was captured. Oobleck nodded, indicating that was the correct answer. Perhaps if he'd paid more attention in class, and less on losing his pants, he wouldn't have been remembered as such a failure. Blake said to Cardin specifically. That really got to him as Cardin stood up, looking ready to punch someone. Mr. Winchester, please take your seat. Oobleck told him. He then noticed John snickering and zoomed over toward him as well. You and Mr. Ark can both see me after class for additional readings. John groaned as Oobleck resumed the lecture. Class was dismissed as Pyrrha, Ren, and Nora walked outside. You two go on ahead, I'll wait for John. Pyrrha told her teammates. Sure thing, Nora said while Ren simply nodded as they walked off. Pyrrha then took out her scroll and dialed for a friend. Tails, are you busy? I'm here. What's up? I could use your help with something. Back in the classroom, Oobleck sipped his coffee for what could be the 100th time as he addressed the two boys sitting in front of him. John had the decency to look ashamed while Cardin looked more annoyed than anything. You two have been struggling in my class since day one. Now, I don't know if it's a lack of interest, or just your stubborn nature, but whatever it is, it stops now. The professor told them with finality in his voice. You've worked hard to gain entrance into this school, and we only accept the best of the best, so I expect you to act like it. That caused John to look away slightly. History is important, gentlemen. If you can't learn from it, you're destined to repeat it. Oobleck said somewhat dramatically. Pages 51 to 91. I want an essay on my desk by next class. Now, run along. Hera saw John and Carden leave the classroom, only for the latter to push the former to the ground in annoyance. Hera glared at him as he left while she helped John to his feet. "You know, I really will break him in half," Hera told him, while John could only hang his head with a sigh. "Come with me, I have an idea." It was nighttime as Shadow the Hedgehog stood in solitude on the rooftop of the student dorms. It seemed the most private place to be alone with his thoughts, having spent the past few weeks learning everything he could about the world of Remnant. He had already understood the basics of how this world operates, having read all the data on his personal scroll that he currently held in his hands as he skimmed through the info again. There were 4 kingdoms in total: Vale, Mistral, Vacuo, and Atlas, residing in the now-defunct Kingdom of Mantle. There was also the small Faunus nation of Menagerie, but it wasn't considered an official kingdom. The only other landmass was an unnamed continent that seemed to be the homeland of the creatures of Grimm. The Grimm were certainly perplexing. At first, he thought they were Remnant's wildlife, but he dismissed the thought upon seeing their bodies disintegrate instantly upon death in his first encounter with them. Upon reading all the info he could about them, it further debunked any natural wildlife theories he had. Primarily on how there were plenty of other wild animals already. There was also the fact that Grimm only seemed to target humans, being drawn to negative emotions, and only got into conflict with animals in regard to territory. Why they targeted humans was unknown, but couldn't be for food since the Grimm didn't seem to have any internal organs. One thing was certain, the Grimm were not natural creatures, and he was also certain that Eggman would find a way to use them to his advantage. Of course, the Grimm weren't the only issue Remnant had. One of the most significant was this world's humanity discrimination against Faunus. Shadow wasn't surprised to hear that. Most humans have always been pitiful in that regard. There was a small part of him that had hoped this humanity would be different from that from his own world, but it seems that was just wishful thinking. With all the hate crimes and discrimination that he read about, as well as the Faunus being centralized to the smallest landmass on Remnant, it was little wonder the White Fang civil rights group emerged and later became an armed militia against humankind. That didn't necessarily mean Shadow approved of some of the White Fang's actions, targeting the weak and innocent. That was the same thing humanity had done to them. Honestly, aside from their outside features, there was little to no difference between humankind and the Faunus of Remnant. Though, a part of him did have sympathy to the Faunus as it was clear that humanity had discriminated against them first and had most of the power on Remnant. Another greater issue was Remnant's defenses. Shadow didn't approve in the slightest of children being trained to combat monsters like the Grimm, one of the few things he and Knuckles could agree on. However, Shadow did understand the reasoning as the Grimm outnumbered humanity and showed no signs of nearing extinction. Humanity had to have some way to defend themselves. And based on what he saw in Beacon, it seems the students had a relatively safe and stable environment to hone their skills and better prepare for the future ahead. But what you learn in school can only get you so far. But it wasn't just the Huntsman academies that had him concerned, it was this world's military, or the lack of thereof. While Shadow understood the reasoning for Remnant not having military forces, so there is less chance of waging open war against one another, like the Great War he read about, it also made it easy for otherworldly invaders such as Eggman to invade. But in fairness, Remnant hasn't encountered alien life before and they didn't have any means for space travel, so it wasn't something they could exactly prepare for. And yet, that didn't stop Atlas from forming its own military. Out of all the kingdoms of Remnant, Atlas was the one that had him the most concerned. It was the most technologically advanced kingdom on the planet, as well as the only one that had a military force. If they so desired, Atlas could easily conquer all of Remnant. Why they hadn't done so already was beyond him. But then again, warfare led to negativity and that would only lead to an increase in Grimm activity, so there was that. He could tell from what he read that Atlas had a controversial reputation, having its huntsmen trained to enter the military, as well as more or less abandoning Mantle below it. While a civil war between them would certainly lead to Mantle's destruction to the technological advantage Atlas had over it, Shadow would be a fool to dismiss the idea. Atlas could decide to just be done with Mantle entirely whenever it wanted to and move on to the rest of Remnant, including the White Fang, Grimm activity or not. Shadow had seen humanity's foolish nature so many times that expecting the worst from them was practically second nature to him. But, Remnant's internal problems weren't his concern at the moment. Right now, his central focus was preparing for Eggman. He was certain the doctor would try to use the Grim, which is why Sonic insisted on Shadow making his own weapon for when they would fight them. While Shadow was confident in his own abilities, he decided to make one anyway, if only to keep Sonic from pestering him about it. His weapon was sheathed behind his back. It was a single-edged, dark-colored sword, with a semi-serrated edge and a web-like pattern near the point. But it wasn't just a sword, as the handle of the sword could be pulled open to separate a short, customized, semi-automatic machine gun of his own personal design, one that can be detached from the sword, allowing him to dual-wield sword and gun simultaneously. He named this weapon, Remnant. Shadow's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a door opening, where he looked to see Pyrrha leading John to the rooftop. He also heard a familiar propelling sound, glancing slightly upward to see Tails arriving as well. Nobody appeared to notice him, and he wasn't planning on drawing their attention, so he moved around the corner to the other side of the building to continue his reading while the three made conversation. "Hey guys." Tails landed to greet the pair. What's going on?" John asked. "John, we know you're having a difficult time in class, and that you're still not the strongest of fighters," Pyrrha began. "So, we're here to help you." John didn't seem as enthusiastic as one would think. "You and I can train up here after class when no one can bother us," Pyrrha offered. "And Tails can help you with classwork. I know I've only been on this planet for a short time, but I've gotten a pretty good idea of how things work here," Tails added. "So if you need any help, I can give it to you." "Why you think I need help?" John asked, sounding somewhat offended. No, that's not what I meant," Pyrrha responded. "But you just said it, both of you." "John, listen. Even the strongest people need help from time to time," Tails told him. "Look at Sonic. He's probably the fastest being in the whole universe. But, he doesn't handle all the universe's problems by himself. Why do you think me, Knuckles, and everyone else are with him? Even Sonic will admit that he needs our help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, that doesn't mean you're weak or anything. And for the record, I know what you're going through." "No, you don't," John tried. "Yes, I do," Tails insisted. "Out of everyone in my home village, I was the only one born with two tails." He showed off his dual tails for emphasis. "Everyone thought it was weird. I got bullied and picked on all the time for that. It didn't matter how smart I was, if anything it made it worse. Everyone thought I was a smart aleck who thought I was better than them. I know what it's like to be pushed around and looked down on, but I got out of that hole. You don't have to stay in it, we can help you." "That's right, you made it to Beacon," Pyrrha insisted. "That speaks volumes of what you're capable of." John turned around, not facing them as a shamed look formed on his face. "You're wrong, both of you. I don't belong here." "That's a terrible thing to say, of course you do," Pyrrha stated. "No, I don't," John exclaimed as he turned back to face them. He looked away as both Tails and Pyrrha looked to him with confused and concerned expressions. "I wasn't really accepted into Beacon," he said, turning around again. What are you talking about?" Tails asked. "I didn't go to any combat school. I didn't pass any tests. I didn't earn my spot at this academy." John faced them again. "I lied. I got my hands on some fake transcripts, and I lied." Needless to say, Pyrrha and Tails were more than a little surprised. "What?" she questioned. "Why would you do that?" Tails also questioned. "'Cause, this is what I've always wanted to be," John began. "My father, my grandfather, and his father before him, they were all warriors. They were all heroes. I wanted to be one too. I was just never good enough." "Well, you can be," Tails told him. "You can get stronger, and we can help you with that." "I don't want help," John exclaimed. "I don't want to be the damsel in distress or the sidekick. I want to be the hero." "John," Pyrrha tried to talk to him. "I'm tired of being the lovable idiot, stuck in the tree, while his friends fight for lives, don't you understand?" John sounded like he was breaking down. "If I can't do this on my own, then what good am I?" Pyrrha tried to reach out to him, but John pulled away. "Just leave me alone, both of you. Okay. If that's what you think is best," Pyrrha said with defeat as she turned around to walk away. Tails spared John one last look before flying away as well. John looked down dejectedly, feeling a sense of regret for pushing them away like that. But he wanted to do this his way. However, his thoughts came to an end with a familiar chuckle as Cardin climbed up onto the roof. "Oh John. Cardin. I couldn't help but hear you and your little friends from my dorm room." Cardin revealed with a somewhat sadistic grin. "So, you snuck into Beacon, huh? I gotta say John, I never expected you to be such a rebel." "Please, Cardin. Please, don't tell anyone." John begged. "John, come on. I'd never rat out a friend like that." Cardin replied, confusing John. A friend. Of course." Cardin pulled John in with his arm around his shoulder, a seemingly friendly expression. But it was far from it as he squeezed a bit around his neck. "We're friends now, Johnny boy. And the way I see it, as long as you're there for me when I need you, we'll be friends for a long time." He let him go, letting John fall to the ground and catch his breath. "That being said, I really don't have time to do those extra readings Dr. Oobleck gave us today. Think you can take care of that for me, buddy?" He ruffled his hair with a sadistic grin. "That's what I thought," he said as he climbed back down to his dorm. "Don't worry John, your secret's safe with me." John didn't have to be a genius to realize he was being blackmailed. But there didn't seem to be anything he could do about it, causing him to sink down in his own self-dug pit of despair. However, unbeknownst to everyone else, there had been another on the rooftop that had been listening to the entire conversation ever since the words, "fake transcripts," were dropped. Shadow had heard everything after that, from John's pathetic excuses and dodges at genuine attempts to help him, to the blackmail attempt at the hands of that weakling Cardin. Honestly, Shadow felt sick to his stomach at such a pathetic display from both John and Cardin. He had said to himself that he would not get involved with any of the students' personal problems, unlike Sonic, and choose to focus on preparing for Eggman. But this was just pathetic, so much so that he couldn't leave it alone. But unlike Pyrrha or Tails, Shadow had no intention of handling this the nice way. 2 days later, it was already late in the evening as Pyrrha glanced out the window with a gloomy expression while Ren sat on his bed to polish his weapon while Nora absent-mindedly bounced up and down on hers. "How come John's been getting home so late?" Nora asked. "He's become rather scarce, ever since he's been fraternizing with Cardin." Ren answered, putting Stormflower away. "That's weird." Nora looked down, still bouncing. "Doesn't he know we have a field trip tomorrow? We need our rest." She stopped bouncing as she flopped on her bed. "I'm sure our leader knows exactly what he's doing," Pyrrha said rather bitterly, causing Ren and Nora to look at each other with concern. "I guess so," Nora sulked. Outside the dorm room, John had overheard everything. He wanted to go in there and talk to his friends, but with everything hanging over him, he wasn't ready to face any of them. He even wondered if he could face them at all. With a sigh, he began to walk away, but just as he turned around the corner, he gave a yelp in surprise as he saw Shadow the Hedgehog glaring at him. "Ah, it's Shadow, right. What are you?" The black hedgehog immediately grabbed John by the arm. "Come with me." Without even waiting for a reply, Shadow teleported himself and John out of the dormitory. After a few more zaps at teleporting, John was thrown onto the rooftop of the school's cafeteria. It was a secluded spot where nobody could bother them. John held his head and stomach as he shakily pulled himself up. What did you? I'm so dizzy I might throw up." John struggled to keep his lunch down before looking around in surprise at their newfound location. Are we on a roof?" He heard a clanging noise behind him and looked to see Crocia Morse had been tossed at his feet. "Pick it up," Shadow ordered, already having Arondite out. "What's going on? What are you?" "Pick it up," Shadow stated. "Don't make me say it again. Draw your weapon." Startled by his harsh tone, John picked up his sheathed sword and drew it, expanding the shield. "Now attack me," Shadow told him. "What? I'm not gonna." John yelped in sudden shock as he felt a burst of energy at his feet that knocked him back. "Attack me," Shadow growled, his red eyes narrowing at the young man. "Now." Seeing he didn't have any room to argue, John stood up and gave a yell as he tried to charge and swing his sword at Shadow, but he swiftly dodged. John swung again and again, but Shadow evaded all the strikes, only to block the last one and used John's own momentum against him as he slid underneath and caused John to trip up and fall to the ground. "You have no technique at all," Shadow told him, literally looking down on John. The blonde picked himself up again to swing his blade at Shadow, but he easily blocked it. Same attack pattern over and over. Shadow continued as he kicked at John's feet, causing him to trip again before Shadow struck the handle of Arondite into John's face to knock him down again. Sloppy. Predictable. Getting frustrated with all the criticism Shadow threw his way, John yelled as he tried to leap up and swing his blade on Shadow, but the black hedgehog grabbed John's sword arm by the wrist with his free hand and brought the handle of his blade onto the back of his head to knock him down once again. John tried to swing his shield at Shadow this time, but Shadow was able to bat it away with Arondite and even knock it out of John's arms before bringing his knee into John's chin to knock him up and down on his back. You swing your sword like a child with a baseball bat, and you don't even have a good grip on your only defense. Shadow said, gesturing to the downed shield before putting Arondite away. Now, do you think you can handle an opponent who is unarmed? That really seemed to hit John where it hurts. Can he fight someone who is unarmed? With his anger and frustration boiling even higher, John got up again and charged Shadow, raising the Crocea Morse sword high above his head and brought it down. Only for Shadow to easily clap the blade in between his hands and stop John's attack, much to his shock. Shadow then easily wrenched the sword from John's hands before punching him in the face to send him rolling across the rooftop. He stopped, and before he had a chance to recover, Arondite was driving into the ground near the right side of his neck while Crocea Morse was on the left. Shadow, with both blades in his hand, crossed them like an X with the blades coming dangerously close to his throat. If I were an enemy, your head would already be separated from your body. Shadow leaned in close, causing John to whimper as he tried to move his head back in fright. In fact, there were at least 10 different openings where I could have killed you. Easily. It is clear you do not know what you are doing. With a grunt of disgust, Shadow pulled the swords out and stood up, allowing John to sit up and rub his neck. Honestly, I'm surprised nobody could figure out that you cheated your way into this school. John gasped in shock, looking at Shadow with circular eyes. Why you know. I overheard everything. The ultimate life form told the student. Including you easily submitting to that fool. Honestly, I've never seen anything more pathetic. What did you think would happen upon entering this school the way you did? What did you hope to achieve? John held his head down in shame. Answer me. What did you hope to achieve? Shadow exclaimed. I thought I could get stronger. John exclaimed back, standing up. I thought I could learn everything all the great heroes of the world know, and I'd be just like them. I'd be just like my father, grandfather, and everyone else. Why? Shadow questioned. What? John looked perplexed at that question. I just told you. No, why do you want to be a hero? A huntsman, Shadow clarified. John looked more confused than anything else. Why do I just thought. Do you even know what a huntsman does? Shadow questioned. Yeah, they fight grim. John was cut off as Shadow punched him in the gut, knocking the wind out of him as he fell to his knees. They protect those who can't protect themselves. Shadow told him. By choosing to be a huntsman, you've chosen to put the lives of others in your hands. But you don't seem to care about that. You only care for yourself. That's not true, John tried as he looked up at the glaring hedgehog. Then why did you push them away? Shadow questioned, causing John to look in surprise. You think needing help is a weakness. You think cooperation is a hindrance. You think there's something wrong with being weak. I want to be a hero. John tried, only for Shadow to grab him by his hoodie and pull him in close to his face so he could see the soul-piercing red eyes of the ultimate life form. You are not a hero. You are a child wallowing in his own self-pity because of an unearned sense of pride. Shadow threw him back to the ground. Every word Shadow spoke was like a dagger piercing his spirit. He broke down all his barriers and hit him where it hurts. Tears were already forming in his eyes as he could no longer deny it. You're right, John admitted as Shadow listened. Everyone, even my own family, didn't want me to become a huntsman, but they were just so cool. In my family, they were all heroes. I wanted to be part of that, but I'm not. I'm a failure. He hung his head down in acceptance. Shadow's expression softened only slightly. So, you finally admit it. You admit you're weak. Yes, but do you intend to stay weak? Shadow asked, causing John to look up in surprise. Nobody ever stays weak unless they choose to be. Weakness itself isn't a choice, but remaining weak is. Every being is weak at one point in their life, and there is no shame in that. The true shame is knowing you are weak but choosing to remain that way. And that's exactly what you've done. By refusing aid from your friends, people who can help you become stronger, and by submitting to that fool, you have chosen to remain weak. But more importantly, with your personal desire to be a hero, you've forgotten one critical detail. What is it? John asked, listening to every word. You're not just a hero, you are a leader. Shadow told him. You have a team that needs and depends on you. As a huntsman and leader, you are not only responsible for the people you need to protect, but your teammates as well. If you aren't there for them, if you're more focused on yourself, all those people you are responsible for, be it civilian or ally, they will pay the consequences, sometimes with their lives. Shadow leaned in close again. This is not a game. It's not about your need for glory, it's not about you at all. It's about them. If they die because you choose not to be there for them, their blood is on your hands and yours alone. Do you really want that? If not, then get stronger, even if that means asking for help. Knowing and admitting you are weak is the first step to getting stronger. So, let me ask you one more time. Do you intend to remain weak, and abandon your team? John, having listened to everything, shook his head. No, I don't want to stay weak. Then go to your team. Shadow told him, because they are your responsibility, not Cardin. But he knows I used fake transcripts. John stated, if I stand up to him, he'll have me expelled. Shadow signed in annoyance. If that is what you're concerned about, then there is one other alternative. You can leave. What? John questioned, not quite sure what he meant by that. Tell Ozpin what you did. Shadow explained. Tell him you used fake transcripts to get into this school, and leave Beacon of your own accord. At least that way you can walk away with some dignity and respect. John had to replay that sentence in his head a few times. Leave Beacon. I never thought about, but, my team. I'm certain Ozpin could find a suitable replacement. Shadow told him, when you are weak, you are faced with two decisions. The first, is getting stronger. Second, if you feel you are unable to, at least for the immediate future, find someone else to act in your stead. There is no shame in stepping to the side if you are unable to complete the task. Shadow handed John his sword back, which he slowly took. You have a choice to make, I suggest you make it soon. Shadow turned around to leave, but John stopped him. Hey wait, why? Why tell me all this? Why try to help me? The black hedgehog turned around to face John one last time. Because I choose to. He then teleported away. John was left alone with his thoughts. Everything Shadow had said to him had been hammered into his very soul. In a way, it felt good to admit his own weakness. He really did care about his friends, even those not on his team, and he didn't want to leave them. But, then again, he knew how dangerous the Grimm were and he wasn't the best fighter. Maybe someone else could be a better choice as a leader for his team. The idea of leaving on his own terms and not Cardin's did seem like a better idea than letting that jerk rat him out. But, what about Pyrrha and the others? What would they think if he just left? His thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of his scroll. He picked it up and answered, seeing the caller was none other than Cardin. Hey, it's your buddy, Cardin. I know you're probably busy with that dust project I gave you, but, I'm gonna need you to go out and get me a bag of rapier wasps. And make sure they've got some really big stingers. It's important, so don't screw this up. John hung up on his scroll, anger fuming. After the harsh lesson that was just beaten into him, John didn't feel as intimidated as he did before. Oh, you want rapier wasps, huh? Fine, I'll get you some. Real nasty ones, too. The next day, teams RWBY, JNPR, and CRDL were led by Professor Goodwitch through the bright red forest that was known as the Forever Fall Forest. Several of the students, particularly RWBY, couldn't help but look in awe at the beautiful forest around them as the red leaves continued to fall, as they did year-long. Yes students, the forest of Forever Fall is indeed beautiful. Glinda told all the students. But we are not here to sightsee. Professor Peach has asked all of you to collect samples from the trees deep inside this forest. And I am here to make sure none of you die while doing so. She stopped, causing the student to stop behind her, except for John, who appeared to be carrying all of CRDL's supplies, as he bumped into Cardin. John looked away with an innocent whisper as Carden glared at him and Glinda gave the students their instructions. Each of you is to gather 1 jar's worth of red sap. However, this forest is full of the creatures of Grimm. Although an advanced team has been sent in to clear them out, you can't let your guard down and stay by your teammates. Glinda said as Ruby and Yang exchanged knowing glances, having a good idea who this advanced team is. We will rendezvous back here at 4 o'clock. Have fun. As Glinda left, the students began to split off into their respective groups, all except John as Carden pulled him in the direction away from his own team. Come on buddy, let's go. John ended up following him, much to Pyrrha's displeasure as she caught up with the rest of her team. But they weren't alone, somebody else was watching over them from the foliage of the trees. A certain black and red hedgehog that had been watching over John since their talk, if only to see if he really had been listening and what he might do. Glinda had met up with the group consisting of Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Rouge some distance away from where all the students were. There are considerably less Grimm here than expected. I would like to thank you for your assistance in this matter. Glinda told them. No problem. Helping people and fighting monsters is what we do. Sonic smirked. But I suspect you called me here for something more than congratulations. Glinda said. Yes, we did. Follow us. Tails said as they led her to where they wanted her to go. As they walked, Tails was left alone in his thoughts a bit. He didn't tell any of his friends about John using fake transcripts to get into Beacon, but if he was being honest, he was certain they would already figure it out, if they hadn't already. Knuckles had already pointed out the amateurish techniques in John's fighting style and he was the expert at that sort of thing. But, it was still weird that they didn't say anything. Maybe they were hoping John would grow on his own. Tails was hoping that too. But, given his attitude when they last met, and that he's still letting himself get bullied by Carden, it may not be the case. If things didn't get better, Tails might have to tell Ozpin about it. While Tails didn't like the idea of raiding out John like that, it may also be for the best given how dangerous the Grimm can be. If John couldn't get stronger, then a fight is not the best place for him. The group came to their destination, a large puddle of a black tar-like substance that laid in the middle of a small barren clearing that completely contrasted the lively forest surrounding it. I see, you have found a Grimm pool. Glinda observed. Probably one of several scattered throughout this forest. It's likely where they come from. Knuckles assumed. These pools are scattered all throughout Remnant. Glinda explained. We are uncertain as to what their origin is, or how they are able to produce the creatures of Grimm, but this is where they emerge. And the fact that they're still around suggests you don't have anything that can destroy it, right? Rouge assumed. That is correct. Glinda admitted reluctantly as she pulled out her crop and used her telekinesis to pull out a large rock from the area nearby and dropped it over the pool. The rock sank into the pool completely, leaving nothing of it left. Like quicksand, Amy noted. Everything that enters this liquid is broken down and destroyed. Glinda said. Even dust can't seem to stop it. There might not be anything that can stop it naturally, Tails said as he set down the backpack he had been carrying and began to rummage through it to pull out a special orb-like container. If I can extract a sample from this liquid and get a proper analysis, maybe I can develop a way to counter it. Think maybe you can lift a piece of it up with your telekinesis. I can try, but I must tell you that our most advanced scientists have been trying to study the Grimm and the pools they originate from for years, and have yet to find a concrete answer. Glinda told him. Won't stop this guy. Sonic rubbed Tails' head with a smirk. Seriously, Tails has worked with all kinds of crazy stuff, even alien tech and energy. If anyone can figure a way to take out this gunk, he can. Yep, our little genius. Amy nudged Tails slightly with a grin, causing Tails to rub the back of his head with a smile. Thanks guys, I'll try my best. Very well, if you insist. I'll help. Glinda offered, aiming her crop at the Grimm pool and concentrating her powers on a small portion of it. Sonic, Knuckles, Amy, and Rouge stood ready to face whatever Grimm that may emerge from the pit as Glinda was able to extract a small batch of it, roughly the size of a basketball, and lifted the pulsating substance into the air. Tails immediately opened the orb. Put it in here, he requested, allowing Glinda to carefully place the substance into the container, not even spilling a single drop before Tails closed it shut. Got it. Thanks Ms. Goodwitch. You're welcome. Glinda nodded as Tails put the newly collected sample safely into his backpack. If you were able to find a solution, we would all greatly appreciate it. Though a part of her did indeed hope Tails would find a means to eradicate the Grim Pools, if he was as smart as Sonic and the others claimed to be. But at the same time, she was prepared for them to be wrong. Being a huntress had taught her to hope for the best while also preparing for the worst. Alright, mission accomplished. Sonic dusted his hands with a smirk. Not so fast. Knuckles noticed something on the other side of the pool and made his way over. Knuckles, what is it? Amy asked as the red echidna kneeled closer to the ground. We got some tracks here. Knuckles revealed, feeling his hand along the ground. Rouge quickly joined him and inspected it herself. You're right. The white bat agreed. These footprints are fresh. From something pretty big. Likely an Ursa. Knuckles assumed. And given how fresh these prints seem, it must have emerged very recently. Everyone got serious at the thought of that. Though each of them could take on one Grim easy enough, it could cause a panic among the students and that could attract more Grim nearby, which would only make things worse. Alright, fan out and try to find that thing and any other pals it might have. Sonic told everyone, including Glinda, as they began to split up around the area. Hopefully we'll take care of this before it becomes a problem. Meanwhile, Team CRDL appeared to be relaxing as John had gathered all the tree sap for them, 6 jars in total before dropping them on the ground in front of them and falling over. Hey, great work, Johnny boy. Cardin mockingly congratulated him. Now that wasn't too hard, was it? I think I'm allergic to this stuff. John said, his voice sounding somewhat hoarse. Great, great, great. Cardin stood up. So John, I bet you're asking yourself, why did my buddy Cardin ask me to collect 6 jars of tree sap, when there's only 5 of us? Pretty sure it's not for extra credit. John said as he picked himself up. No, something better. Cardin smirked as he led his team and John a bit closer toward some of the other students, perched behind some cover where they saw that the others appeared to be handling themselves well in gathering tree sap, save for Nora who drank a whole jar's worth. Cardin, what's going on? John asked nervously. Payback. Cardin glared. Since that blue faunus freak who took my pants is nowhere to be seen, I'll just have to settle for one of his little friends that he hangs around with. That red-haired know-it-all who thinks she's so smart also has it coming, so she'll do. You're kidding, John exclaimed. You want payback on her for something she didn't even do. I don't recall asking for your opinion. Cardin stated as he pulled out a box with AW on it. Inside the box, one could hear several angry buzzing noises. Listen up, boys. Last night, old John here managed to round up an entire box full of rapier wasps, and now, we're gonna put 'em to work. According to that one essay he wrote for me, these nasty things love sweets. I'm thinking it's time we teach her a thing or two. He pulled John up and forcibly gave him the jar. And you're going to do it. However, none of them appeared to notice Shadow perched in one of the trees behind them, remaining silent and hidden behind the thick red leaves. While Shadow's opinion of Cardin was already significantly low, it just dropped even lower. He was going to humiliate somebody else just to get payback on Sonic and having John do the work for him. To be honest, Shadow was more than tempted to go down there and teach Cardin and his whole team a harsh lesson in humility, but he had a sneaking suspicion that John had something planned. Shadow read John's body language and could tell there was anger deep inside, and it wasn't hard to deduce whom that anger was directed toward. But, in the worst case scenario, and John was going to throw that tree sap, Shadow would snatch it before it even left John's hand and teach the rest of CRDL that lesson in humility he so wanted to teach them. But for now, he would only watch. John's anger was indeed fuming, but it wasn't just anger toward Cardin. It was anger toward himself. Pyrrha, as well as Tails, had both wanted to do nothing but help him. They treated him with respect and compassion, even after revealing he forged his transcripts, still offering to help. And how did he repay them? He pushed them away and let himself become Cardin's own lapdog. You think needing help is a weakness. You think cooperation is a hindrance. You think there's something wrong with being weak. You're not just a hero, you are a leader. You have a team that needs and depends on you. So, let me ask you one more time. Do you intend to remain weak, and abandon your team? You have a choice to make, I suggest you make it soon. The more Shadow's words replayed in his mind, the more solidified his resolve became. He already knew what he had to do, and Cardin's demand of him just sealed it. John's expression went hard as he dropped the jar. I have a better idea. He grabbed Cardin by his shoulders and shoved his face into the box of rapier wasps. John stepped back as Cardin screamed, pulling himself up as the vicious insect stung him all over his face. Even if his aura did protect him, it still hurt like hell. As Cardin tried to wave his hands and swat the rapier wasps away, John couldn't help but smirk. A smirk even graced Shadow's face as he saw it all. He was rather pleased to see John took his lesson to heart, but even more so in John's use of those insects. It was a surprise to be sure, but an amusing one. However, the rest of CRDL grabbed John and forced him to the ground as Cardin, who had managed to swat away the rapier wasps, glared down at him. That wasn't very smart, Johnny boy. Cardin growled. No, me submitting to you wasn't the smart move. John talked back, causing Cardin to kick him in the face before the rest of his team did the same in literally kicking John while he's down. Once again, Shadow felt the urge to beat Cardin and his gang to a bloody pulp. But this was John's battle and he had to solve it on his own if he was going to develop any kind of self-esteem, be it as a huntsman or as a person. Unless it was life or death, Shadow would not intervene, tempting as it was. Hera was slightly startled, thinking she heard something behind her, turning around to try and find the source of the sound, holding the jar of tree sap in her hands. Hera, are you okay? RWBY asked. Why yeah, she replied, even though she couldn't quite shake this feeling something was wrong. But in her thoughts, she had somehow missed the sound of slurping until she noticed her jar of tree sap was now completely empty. Nora. Hera scolded to the girl in pink as she hid behind a tree with a guilty smile and sap all over her face. Cardin hoisted John up, his face covered in bruises as the rest of his gang surrounded him. You think you're funny, Johnny boy? Cardin questioned. You think you're tough? Well, let's see how tough you are when I tell Goodwitch how you cheated your way into this school. Not if I say something first, John winced, surprising Cardin before he laughed. Seriously? You'd just walk out on this school? On your crappy family legacy? Cardin mocked. Wow, you really are a loser. To Cardin's surprise, John laughed back. I'm a loser. I'm not the one who lost his pants in the middle of the cafeteria. Or who was so sore about it I'd try to humiliate somebody else who had nothing to do with it. You want to take it up with those guys, do it yourself. Or are you too weak to do it? So, who's the real loser? With every word, Cardin fumed even more. His face was so flushed with rage that he didn't even bother replying with words before punching John in the face again. But when the fist made contact, something unexpected happened. There was a brief flash of yellow light around John's body as Cardin felt his fist hit something harder than expected, forcing him to drop John, who looked more than a little shocked himself. Shadow blinked in minor surprise, having seen an energy field materialize around John just before Cardin's fist made contact. Even all the bruises around John's face had appeared to have healed completely. Was that aura? Shadow thought to himself. Did he somehow manifest it without even knowing? Perhaps there's more to him than I thought. A roar got everyone's attention as a large Ursa entered the area, having been drawn in by all the negativity. John and the rest of CRDL were shocked to say the least as a serious expression formed on Shadow's face as well. Most of the students ran for their lives while the Ursa set its sights on Cardin, knocking him down with its claws. Cardin tried to defend himself with his mace, but the Ursa smacked it out of his hands. Even though Shadow didn't like Cardin in the slightest, he wasn't just going to leave him to die. He was about to step in and kill the Ursa in one shot. But John was already in between Cardin and the Ursa, using his shield to block the claw strike. The roar was heard around the forest, catching Sonic's attention as he came to a stop from his search. Think we found our boy, Sonic said as he zoomed in the direction he heard the roar from. Across the forest, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Rouge had also heard the roar from their respective locations and quickly made their way to its source. Did you guys hear that? RWBY asked her friends, having heard the roar as well. But they were surprised to see most of CRDL running for their lives past them. Ursa! Ursa! Russell screamed before literally bumping into Yang. What? Where? Yang questioned as she picked him up by his shirt. Back there. It's got Cardin. Russell pointed behind him. John. Pyrrha knew he would be there as well, leaving her greatly worried. Ruby immediately took charge. Young, you and Blake go get Professor Goodwitch, try and find Sonic too. Ren, Nora, go with them. There could be more, Pyrrha added. Weiss, you're with us. Ruby told her partner, as she and Pyrrha drew their weapons. Understood. Weiss nodded. Shadow continued to watch as John defended Cardin from the Ursa. He honestly did not expect John to stand up for his bully like that. He also had a feeling he wasn't doing this for any sort of glory, or to get one over on Cardin. He was protecting him just to protect him, nothing else. It seemed John was capable of holding his own at the moment, using his shield to defend himself for the most part, so Shadow wouldn't intervene just yet. You want to be a hero, Let's see what you can do. Shadow noticed the arrival of Sonic and Tails, the blue hedgehog about to jump in, but Tails held out his hand to stop him. No, hold on, Tails told him. He then looked past the scene to see Knuckles, Amy, and Rouge arrive on the other side of the clearing. Tails shook his head to them, telling them not to do anything yet. They, as well as Sonic, need only take one glance at the situation to see what Tails was implying and nodded. Even Sonic sighed as he wouldn't step in either. Not yet anyway. Behind Sonic and Tails, Ruby, Pyrrha, and Weiss had just arrived. Ruby and Weiss were also about to intervene, but Pyrrha stopped them. Wait. What? But why? Ruby questioned, but Sonic coughed to get her attention. One look from his eyes said it was going to be okay. If things got bad, they would step in, just not right now. Pyrrha and Tails exchanged glances as they both nodded to each other before focusing on the battle. The still hidden Shadow was satisfied to see they came to the same conclusion he did. This was John's fight and he had to win it for himself. John ducked and rolled underneath the Ursa's claw strike before slicing at its side. He moved quickly on his feet, slicing around the Ursa's back and sides, making sure to avoid its front as it tried to turn around and swipe at him. Shadow observed his every move, impressed in how seriously he was taking this fight, making sure to avoid the Ursa's offensive weapons, attacking from behind where it's most vulnerable. But still, a lot of his strikes didn't have enough power to do any serious damage, so it didn't seem like this fight may end anytime soon. Maybe John did have potential, but he still had a long way to go. That was proven correct as the Ursa turned around more quickly than before to swipe at John again. Though he did protect himself with the shield, the force was still strong enough to knock him down. But he was quick to get back up and charge the Ursa again, trying to slice at its side once more, but the Ursa proved to be surprisingly adaptable as it smacked John down again. But he still picked himself back up. John glanced down at the scroll within his shield, seeing his aura was already in the red. According to Professor Goodwitch, now would be the appropriate time to fall back and take a defensive strategy. But there was no time, the Ursa was already on him. He had to end this now. John gave a yell as he charged at the Ursa, pulling back Crocia Morse for a final slice while the Ursa swiped its claw downward. Everyone watching knew this was a fatal mistake as John's shield was being held down. The Ursa would strike first and it could be a near-fatal injury. However, before anyone else could intervene, Pyrrha had lifted her hand and focused her semblance on John's shield to raise it up just as Shadow snapped his fingers to unleash a small burst of chaos energy at the back of the Ursa's head. In that one instance, John's shield had protected him from the Ursa's strike as the burst of chaos energy threw it off balance and left it open for John to swing his sword and decapitate it. He was so caught up in the moment, he didn't notice anything else. Ruby, Sonic, Weiss, and Tails looked towards Pyrrha in surprise, having seen her use her semblance. What? Ruby questioned. Was that your polarity semblance? Tails asked, having seen it for the first time. Yes. Pyrrha confirmed with a smile. Metal powers, huh, sweet. Sonic smirked. Eggman, I think I found your worst nightmare. Very impressive, indeed. Even Weiss nodded with approval as Pyrrha turned around to walk away. Wait, where are you going? Yeah, we gotta tell them what happened. Ruby added. No, I think it's best to leave it alone. Tails shook his head with a smile, to which Pyrrha nodded as they walked away, followed by Ruby and Weiss. Sonic looked to the other side to see Knuckles and Amy leaving as well, with Rouge taking to the sky with her wings, coming to the same conclusion. Though Sonic walked away briefly at first, before stopping just before a certain tree to catch one final glimpse of John helping Cardin to his feet. "Holy crap, John," Cardin sounded genuinely impressed, but that smile faded as John looked him straight into the eye and spoke in a firm tone of finality. "Don't ever mess with my team, my friends, ever again. Got it?" With that, John walked away, leaving Cardin alone to think about what had just happened in this short amount of time. Having seen everything, Sonic gave a nod of approval right before Rouge dropped by his side. "Looks like John's gonna do just fine, don't ya think?" Sonic said. "I think so too," Rouge said before leaning in closely. "You know who else helped him out back there, and was watching the whole thing, right?" she asked with a knowing smirk that Sonic matched with one of his own. "Oh definitely. He might be rough and edgy on the surface, but he's got a big soft spot underneath." "Right, Shadow?" Sonic asked aloud, even though the black hedgehog was already long gone. Later that night, John stood on the dormitory rooftop, waiting for a certain pair of people to arrive so he could give them a proper apology. Almost on K, Tails had descended from the sky just as Pyrrha walked out from the door. "Got your text that you wanted to say something," Tails said to John. "No Cardin, tonight. I thought you two were best buds," Pyrrha added. John gave a sigh, turning to face them. "Pyrrha, Tails, I'm sorry. I was a jerk. You guys were only trying to help and I had all this stupid macho pride stuff in my head and—" "John, it's okay." Pyrrha stopped him, accepting his apology and assuring there were no hard feelings. "Yeah, don't worry about it," Tails also assured. "Trust me, I've met way more stubborn people. We're good." "Thanks," John smiled. "But I will confess, I was surprised at how quickly you came around," Pyrrha said. John chuckled nervously. "I had some sense beaten into me, literally. Still sore in some spots." Tails had a pretty good idea who it was that taught John such a lesson but chose not to say anything. "Hey, speaking of, look, I know I don't have any right to say this after what happened but," John began. "Would you guys still be willing to help me train and even study? I want to become a huntsman and would you help me out with that?" I don't know. What do you think, Pyrrha?" Tails asked almost playfully. She only responded with a teasing grin as she walked up toward John and pushed him down. "Hey, your stance is all wrong. You need to be wider and lower to the ground," Pyrrha told him as she offered him her hand, which he accepted with a smile. "Let's try that again. And when you're done, you and I are going to have a long chat in regard to physics and history, because you seem to be struggling there the most," Tails added in a similar teasing fashion. John couldn't help but laugh. "Thanks guys." Professor Ozpin was in his office at the top of Beacon Tower. The only sounds filling the room were the cogs of the clockwork below and around him, as well as the pen to paper as he filled out various forms of paperwork. He suddenly came to a stop. "I'm beginning to think that you and Sonic deliberately avoid using the door." He turned around in his chair to see Shadow standing on the balcony. "I do leave it unlocked, all you need do is knock. You knew from the beginning that John Ark used forged transcripts to enter this school, didn't you?" Shadow questioned, stepping into the office. "I wasn't aware the very second he enrolled," Ozpin answered. "But upon seeing his performance in the Emerald Forest, it wasn't difficult to figure it out. After teaching at this academy for years, in which many have pulled similar stunts, you tend to notice a few details that would lead to that conclusion." "Why allow it?" Shadow questioned. "One could see that as a severe lapse in judgment. I feel I don't have to tell you what you are preparing those children for. Those who mistake their duties and responsibilities as ways to obtain glory and fame are often those that die first, and take others with them." Ozpin gave a sad sigh. "You're not wrong about that. Even those that do enter this school through legitimate means fall into that same trap, leading to unfortunate ends for themselves, for those they are meant to protect, and even teammates." "But why do you allow it?" Shadow questioned one again. "I don't," Ozpin answered. "As I said, many have tried to sneak into this school for one reason or another. Many of them, I was able to find and expel. But not Ark," Shadow pointed out. "It is true that young Mr. Ark's combat methods leave much to be desired," Ozpin admitted. "But I wouldn't say he is not completely hopeless or lacking in potential. If that were the case, I would have expelled him without hesitation." I'm certain you've seen it as well, otherwise you wouldn't have come to me now. Ozpin said, causing Shadow to narrow his eyes. With the proper training and guidance, I believe Mr. Ark will grow into an outstanding huntsman as well as a better person. He would not be the first who snuck into this school for their own personal motives and came out with a much better outlook on life. Shadow stared for a few seconds before turning around. Fine then. Is that all you wanted to see me for? Ozpin asked. Yes, Shadow answered as he stepped back out onto the balcony. It has been some time since you and your friends have arrived at Beacon, and yet we have not seen or heard anything from your enemy, Dr. Eggman. Ozpin asked. Most peculiar, given what I've heard about him from Sonic. Do you have any ideas why that may be? Shadow stopped a moment before he gave his answer. I can't say for certain. But what about you? He turned to face Ozpin again. Do you have any theories? Ozpin and Shadow stared at each other for a long time, neither of them answering as brown eyes met red, almost as if they were both trying to silently read each other. Ozpin then gave his response. You tell me. He is your enemy, I can't say anything as of yet to meet the man face to face. Shadow gave a slight huff before turning back around and leaping off the balcony, leaving Ozpin alone. He could tell that Shadow didn't completely trust him. One look in those red eyes said it all. It reminded him of somebody else who carried a distrustful look in their red eyes. Somebody else, like John, who cheated their way into this school. Someone he once trusted and felt that trust was mutual, only for it to fall apart. Ozpin could only hope that things didn't turn out the same way this time around. Black and white and red all over. A large warehouse that served as a storage facility for dust shipments in transit would normally be a rather quiet place at night, but that was not the case here as the sounds of gunfire and battle were heard from inside the building, complete with flashes of light and fire being seen from the windows. A squad of at least 20 White Fang soldiers were currently fighting their most dangerous adversaries they've ever seen. Were their opponents soldiers of Atlas? No. Were they professional trained huntsmen? No. It was only a team of 3, of the most skilled and arguably dangerous beings of their own world. 6 White Fang agents stood together as they fired their machine guns at Shadow the Hedgehog, who leapt over a metal crate of dust before delivering a homing attack onto the center one to send him flying and crashing into another crate, landing in the center of the group. Before they had a chance to attack, Shadow quickly drew Arondite as he spun his legs, adding an extra boost from his rocket shoes to trip them up while also spinning around as he held out his sword to slice at all of them, damaging their aura while the impact sent them flying and crashing through various parts of the warehouse, shattering what was left of their aura to knock them out. Rouge quickly flew out and extended her foot to kick the face of one White Fang agent, sending him flying as well before 4 more agents charged at her with blades. She quickly drew purple hearts, using them to parry their strikes with relative ease before flying upward to throw them at her enemy like boomerangs. Both spun around to clang each of them in the head before they returned to Rouge, who fell back down to land both her feet into one of the disoriented White Fang members and quickly delivered precise strikes to each of their necks to knock them down. One White Fang agent hid behind a crate and pulled out what appeared to be a rocket launcher, locked onto the seemingly oblivious Rouge and opened fire. Only for Omega to suddenly drop in, catch the rocket in his hand and crush it in his grip, causing it to explode. The smoke quickly cleared to reveal Omega has completely undamaged, much to the rocket-wielding agent's shock before Omega responded by firing a condensed beam of lightning from his wrist to take down the agent in one shot. Careful with your new dust stuff, Omega. Rouge told him. Don't want to blow this place up, especially with us still inside. Acknowledged. Omega responded as 4 more White Fang agents came out from behind some cover to fire their guns at Omega, but the bullets bounced off his metallic body, leaving him undamaged before he retaliated with machine gun fire himself, making sure his targeting system locked onto the agents to avoid any misfire on the dust containers as Rouge instructed. He took all 4 down in less than a minute. With only 4 more agents left, they backed away in fear as Shadow slowly and menacingly walked toward them, Arondite in his hand. Getting desperate, one White Fang agent pulled out an axe and tried to charge Shadow. He easily blocked the swing with his sword before bringing his foot to the side of the agent's head to knock him out. 2 tried to pull out their guns, but Shadow quickly gunned them down with Arondite's built-in rifle, leaving only 1 left, whom Shadow quickly sped to seize him by the throat and lift him in the air. You. You're not a faunus, but you're not human either, so why help them? The agent questioned as Shadow merely glared. You should be fighting with us. Humanity deserves this. They deserve. Shadow's only response was a powerful punch to the face to knock out the agent, as well as knock off the grim mask he wore. That's all of them, Rouge said, dusting her hands, observing all the downed White Fang agents scattered throughout the warehouse. White Fang's agents completely neutralized. Omega reported. No fatalities. Their aura is resilient, but not indestructible. These past few months we've seen some thugs and other common criminals target dust shops and stuff like that, but now the White Fang's doing the same thing. Rouge wondered. Dust is highly destructive weapon. The White Fang would seek to use it in their war against Remnant's humanity. It is an obvious motive. Omega replied. I know, but they're doing the exact same thing as those criminals we've taken down. Rouge said. Maybe they're competing against each other or, she began to think before turning to their leader. What do you think, Shadow? He didn't respond right away, his back turned toward them slightly. Rouge looked with concern, but she then saw that Shadow was holding the grim mask of the last White Fang agent in his hand, deep in thought. Something of a sympathetic look formed on her face as she knew exactly what was going through Shadow's head right now. Hey, you okay? She asked, walking up to him. It's the same, he began. Be it Earth or Remnant, humanity is still the same. Discriminatory, fearful, the White Fang's actions are equally inexcusable, targeting the weak, even using fear tactics like their new face. He said, gazing at the grim mask. They claim to be different, yet their actions have shown that they aren't any different from humanity, every bit as violent as they are. Humans and faunus appear to exhibit the same emotional traits. Omega put his 2 cents in. By that logic, the only difference between humans and faunus is their animalist features. Humans feared the faunus for their appearance, the faunus feared humanity for their actions, both sides view the other as a threat to their existence and have tried to make the other the enemy of their world. Rouge certainly understood the logic in both their cases. She has seen humanity's ugly side too, with Shadow being a victim of it himself. Listen, Shadow, she tried to say something, but he had already thrown the grim mask away and changed the subject. It's not just the White Fang that has me concerned, it's the fact that we haven't seen Eggman since our arrival on Remnant. Rouge could only sigh, knowing Shadow changed the subject to avoid talking about this sort of thing, but she knew he was right at the same time. Yeah, it's been months and we haven't heard any claims at world domination yet. She said. No robot armies, no fire raining down, nothing. Most unusual. Omega agreed. Eggman would have had the Ark repaired within that time frame, and with the Chaos Emeralds in his possession, he would have a fully operational Eclipse cannon at his disposal. He is likely using the Eclipse cannon as a method of last resort if his initial plan for Remnant fails. Shadow assumed. That is likely why he hasn't been seen in this time, trying to bring his plan together. Got any idea what it could be? Rouge asked. I have a few theories, but nothing concrete yet. Shadow answered. I suspect, however, we'll find out soon. The next day, City of Vale. Teams Sonic and RWBY walked through the city, observing all the decorations that were being set up in preparation for the upcoming Vital Festival. While RWBY wore their Huntress outfits, Sonic and his friends wore basic, casual clothing, save for Amy who wore her usual red dress. Just like with most of the Beacon student body, if anyone asked, they were faunus. That way they wouldn't draw any unnecessary attention, and it seemed to work. So it seemed like they were just enjoying a casual walk through the city. Must be some party going on. Sonic said, observing all the preparations. Weiss gave a slight scoff in surprise. It is not just a party. The Vital Festival is dedicated to the cultures of the world. Dances, parades, a tournament, the amount of planning and organization that goes into this event is simply breathtaking. She said excitedly. That actually gets you excited? Sonic questioned. Yang sighed. Yeah, Weiss knows how to take a good thing and make it sound boring. I don't have the patience for that sort of thing either. Knuckles added. Quiet you. Weiss scolded them. But isn't this festival supposed to be like the anniversary for a war or something? Amy asked. Not quite. Tails explained, skimming through the info on his Miles Electric. It's an international event held every 2 years to celebrate the end of this great war. It's held in each of the kingdoms starting with Vacuo, then Mistral, Vale, Atlas and back to Vacuo again. There's also a combat tournament between the huntsman academies of each kingdom. You got me at combat tournament. Sonic smirked. You sure picked up on all that pretty quickly. Blake noted toward Tails. If we're gonna be on Remnant for a while, it's best to know more about this place. The two-tailed fox answered. Can you even go in the tournament? RWBY asked Sonic. You aren't technically students. Maybe not, but it'd still be fun to watch. The blue hedgehog replied. Maybe we can have Ozpin pull a few strings and have an exhibition match with professional huntsmen. Okay, now you got me excited. Yang grinned. This is nice and all, but why exactly are we here? Amy asked as the group approached the docks. This festival isn't for a while, right? Kinda seems early to be celebrating. RWBY plugged her nose. The docks smell like raw fish. I've heard students visiting from Vacuo will be arriving by ship today. Weiss answered Amy's question, and as a representative of Beacon, I feel that it is my solemn duty to welcome them to this fine kingdom. She wants to spy on them, so she'll have the upper hand in the tournament. Blake translated. You can't prove that, Weiss retorted. It is a viable tactic to observe and learn your opponent's abilities. Knuckles granted. That way you can find an appropriate counter. Yes, thank you Knuckles. Weiss smiled and nodded somewhat smugly. But at the same time, depending on how it's handled, it can also be considered an act of dishonor. Knuckles added with teasing grin, causing Weiss to comically scowl. Who are you calling dishonorable? I didn't say you were. The red echidna replied. I only said it depends on how you handle this tactic. So, I'd be a bit careful if you don't want to have a reputation of playing dirty. He joked, causing most of the group to chuckle and for Weiss to pout. However, Sonic noticed RWBY looking in the opposite direction. Hey RWBY, something up. He followed her gaze and saw what appeared to be a crime scene. Whoa. That got everyone else's attention as they made their way closer to get a better look. It appeared to be a shop of some sort with all its windows and doors broken in, police tape everywhere, even separating the crime scene from the public as a pair of detectives continued their investigation. Hey, what happened here? RWBY asked one of the detectives. Robbery. Second dust shop to be hit this week. This place is turning into a jungle. He answered as he went to talk with his partner, which the group of 8 overheard. They left all the money. Just doesn't make a lick of sense. Who needs that much dust? I don't know, the army. Maybe the White Fang. Geez, this again. Amy wondered aloud. Wait, again? Yang questioned. Yeah, we've been around Vale these past few months and have stopped more than a few of these kinds of robberies. Amy answered. Just like here, they didn't touch any of the money. They just tried to take the dust. You've been going around stopping dust robberies? RWBY asked. Well, like you said, we're not students at Beacon. Sonic answered. Been all over the city, and there've been a lot of robberies like this. We've stopped most of them, but not all of them apparently. You wouldn't have happened to encounter two degenerates in the White Fang, wouldn't you? Weiss asked, causing Blake to narrow her eyes. What's your problem? My problem. I just simply don't care for the criminally insane. Weiss replied. The White Fang are hardly a group of psychopaths. Blake countered. They're a collection of misguided faunas. Misguided? Weiss questioned, only for Sonic to quickly come in between them. Okay, that's enough. He told them, trying to stop a fight from occurring. No, nearly all the robberies we've stopped have just been a bunch of thugs. Kinda like that Torchwick guy RWBY and I ran into a while back. You think it was him? RWBY asked. The police haven't found him yet, have they? No, I don't think they have. It could be him. Sonic answered. Hold on, you said, nearly all. Weiss said to Sonic. That implies that not all these robberies were conducted by common criminals. Tails gave a sigh before answering. Last night, Shadow's team said they encountered a group of armed White Fang soldiers trying to get into a dust warehouse. There, you see, Weiss pointed out to Blake specifically. I'm not going to deny the White Fang were in the wrong there. She replied. I'm only saying that these two situations aren't connected. That doesn't change the fact that the White Fang are a bunch of scum. Weiss said. Those faunas know only how to lie, cheat, and steal. This only seemed to rile up Blake even further, something Knuckles noticed with a curious gaze. We've heard about the White Fang too, but didn't they start off as a civil rights group? Amy asked. That kinda seems like a pretty big leap, don't ya think? Hey, stop that Faunus. The group turned their attention back toward the docks, quickly making their way over there to see a young man monkey Faunus with tan skin, blonde hair, blue eyes leaping off one of the cargo ships that just arrived at the port. He wore a loose white jacket, red guards on his forearms, blue jeans and yellow sneakers. Thanks for the ride, guys. He told the shipmates as he leapt off the ship. You no good stowaway. Hey, no good, stowaway would have been caught. He shouted back, hanging upside down from a lamppost with his monkey tail and helping himself to a banana. I'm a great stowaway. A rock was thrown in his direction, which he casually avoided as the two detectives from before approached him. Hey, get down from there this instant. He threw the banana peel at his face in response before perching himself up on the lamppost with a laugh and leapt off and back down to the docks, quickly making his way up the stairs with the detectives in pursuit. He also happened to pass by Team Sonic and RWBY, casting a glance and wink at Blake, much to her confusion before running away. That was something, Tails commented. Well Weiss, you wanted to see the competition, and there it goes. Yang told her in a teasing manner. Wait, that was a student. Knuckles questioned. Why'd he stow away? Probably looking for a thrill. I certainly relate, Sonic assumed. Quick, catch him, Weiss told Sonic. Why me? Aren't you supposed to be the fastest thing alive? You can easily catch him with your speed. The heiress stated. Oh yeah, definitely. Boo it, I'm not in the tournament. I don't see a reason to catch and observe him. That's more so, your thing. Sonic teased. Ah, you, Weiss flustered. Fine, I'll do it myself, she exclaimed as she ran in the direction she saw the monkey Faunus run off into. You totally did that on purpose, didn't you? RWBY asked Sonic, who only grinned in confirmation. Come on, let's at least humor Weiss for a bit. The blue hedgehog said as they went after the heiress. Though Blake had an odd expression on her face as she was among the last to try and follow her friends. Hey, are you alright? Knuckles asked her, startling her somewhat. Why yeah, I'm fine. Let's go, she said before running on ahead. Knuckles looked a bit further concerned before joining the others. It didn't take long for them to catch up to Weiss. But as they rounded the corner, Weiss happened to bump into another girl, causing them both to fall to the ground. Weiss got up and looked to see her, Quarry, had vanished. No, he got away. She heard a whistle from Sonic, turning toward him to see him pointing downward. She looked in the direction to see she was on top of another girl, causing her to quickly pull herself up. One with short, curly orange hair and a pink bow on the back of her head. She had bright green eyes, fair skin, and freckles, while also wearing a white-gray old-fashioned blouse and thin-length frilled dress with green lines on the sides, along with black thigh-high leg pieces attached to her black shoes. Salutations. The girl greeted with a smile, despite still being on the ground. Hello. RWBY greeted back. Are you okay? Sonic asked, offering her hand, which she oddly didn't take. I'm well. Thank you for asking. You sure? Because you're lying flat on the ground. Sonic pointed out, still offering his hand. Yes I am. Do you want to get up? Sonic asked, further extending his hand. Is that why you are holding out your hand? A gesture for me to get up. It means I'm offering you some help in standing up. Sonic told her while also looking just as confused as all his friends behind him. Oh, thank you. And I accept your offer. She grabbed onto his hand, and he pulled her back up on her feet. My name is Penny. It's a pleasure to meet you. Call me Sonic, he replied as the others began to introduce themselves to her. Hi Penny, I'm RWBY. Name's Tails. I'm Weiss. Knuckles. Blake. I'm Amy Rose. Are you sure you didn't hit your head? Yang asked bluntly, causing Amy to elbow her with a slight glare. Oh, I'm Yang. It's a pleasure to meet you. Penny repeated. You said that already. Knuckles pointed out. Penny paused for a second. So, I did. Well, sorry for running into you. Weiss apologized before the group turned around to leave. See ya later. Sonic waved. Take care, friend. RWBY added as they left. They rounded the next corner, some trying to process what just happened. She was weird, Yang commented. We've had weirder friends. Sonic said. That's true. Tails agreed. Now, where did that Faunus riffraff run off to? Weiss tried to resume her search, only for her and everyone else to look in surprise as Penny somehow appeared right in front of them. What did you call me? She asked as Weiss pointed back and forth between where they were and where Penny stood now, trying to understand how she got here so quickly. Someone got here fast, Amy said. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think you heard me. Yang tried to apologize to Penny, thinking she was talking to her. No, not you. She walked past Yang and the rest, getting incredibly close to RWBY and Sonic. You. Me. RWBY and Sonic both questioned at the same time. Both. You both called me, friend. Am I really your friend? Penny asked. Yeah, why not? Sonic shrugged. Yeah, sure. Even RWBY seemed alright with it, no harm in making a new friend, right? A wide smile formed on Penny's face. Sensational. We can paint our nails. And try on clothes. And talk about cute boys. Sorry, I'm not into that stuff. Sonic told her. But, if you wanna get a chili dog sometime, I'm cool with it. What is a chili dog? Penny asked. Sonic then spoke to RWBY in a whisper. Totally forgot to ask, but you got chili dogs in your world, right? Yeah, we do. She confirmed in a whisper back, causing Sonic to breathe a sigh of relief. A world without chili dogs was unthinkable to him. So, what are you doing in Vale? Yang asked Penny. I'm here to fight in the tournament. She answered. Oh, you're a student, huh? Which kingdom are you from? Tails asked. I am from Atlas. Penny replied. A friend of yours? Amy asked Weiss, causing her to roll her eyes. Not all Atlasians know each other. But wait, you are fighting in the tournament? She questioned to Penny. I'm combat ready. The odd girl declared with a salute. Forgive me, but you hardly look the part. Weiss told her. Looks are often deceiving, Knuckles countered. She may be a capable warrior. And you don't much room to talk yourself, Weiss, considering you seemed more dressed like a ballerina than a warrior yourself. Ballet. This is a combat skirt, you Neanderthal. She exclaimed, a comic anger mark on her head. Yeah, RWBY and Amy both agreed as they shared a double high five with Weiss. But if you have just recently arrived in Vale, are you familiar with that monkey-tailed rapscallion? Weiss asked, getting up and close with Penny. The who? Penny didn't seem to quite understand. Weiss presented a crudely drawn picture of the monkey Faunus they saw recently. The filthy Faunus from the boat. Why do you keep saying that? Blake questioned, getting Weiss' attention. Huh, stop calling him a rapscallion. Stop calling him a degenerate. He's a person. Blake exclaimed. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like me to stop referring to the trash can as a trash can? Or the lamppost as a lamppost? Weiss argued. Stop it. Blake shouted. Stop what? He clearly broke the law. Weiss argued back. That filthy Faunus comment was uncalled for. Knuckles told her. Yes, he broke the law. But you shouldn't use that as an excuse to demonize his race. I'm demonizing his race. Weiss exclaimed incredulously. I'm not going around on a xenophobic rampage, killing innocent people like the White Fang. He's probably one of them. The White Fang is one group of Faunus. Not every single one of them is part of that group. Blake stated, her fists clenching to her sides. Stop being such ignorant little brat. How dare you talk to me like that, I'm your teammate. Weiss walked straight up to Blake. Ooh boy, I can see where this is going. Sonic winced as the argument between Weiss and Blake only escalated, even Knuckles seemed to get caught up in it. Yeah, we should go. Yang seemed to agree, standing with Sonic, RWBY, Amy, and Tails. Where are we going? Penny asked. This argument continued well into the night by the time RWBY got back to their shared dorm. Even Sonic and his team were there as well, with Knuckles taking part in the argument as well. There is no denying that the White Fang have done wrong, I admit that. Knuckles said to Weiss. But not every single Faunus is a part of that organization. A few of your classmates are Faunus, working just as hard as you to try and become huntsmen. Are you going to deny that? Why are you taking their side? You're not a Faunus, you're not even from our world. Weiss said to the Red Echidna. I'm not taking any side, I'm trying to keep things fair. Now don't dodge the question I asked. Knuckles told her. Are you going to deny the hard work and effort that your Faunus classmates are giving to become huntsmen? Well, maybe they're the exceptions, Weiss said. Exceptions? Blake shouted, standing straight up. You think the majority of the Faunus are evil by nature? That they're like the Grimm? They wear Grimm masks, don't they? Weiss pointed out. The White Fang, not the Faunus as a whole. They're not the same thing. Blake exclaimed. Why do you think the White Fang hate humanity so much? It's because of people like Cardin and people like you that force the White Fang to take such drastic measures. People like me? Weiss questioned. You're prejudiced. You treat the Faunus like garbage just for existing. Blake yelled. I'm a victim. Weiss yelled back. How exactly are you a victim? Knuckles asked. You're a rich girl, aren't you? You live in the most advanced kingdom on this planet. It's not the White Fang can touch you. She narrowed her eyes at both of them, looking toward Knuckles first. You say you want to keep things fair. Well, let me tell you, both of you, why I hate the White Fang, why I don't particularly trust the Faunus. She walked toward the window, looking out toward the night sky with a serious expression. It's because they've been at war with my family for years. War, as in actual bloodshed. My grandfather's company has had a target painted across its back for as long as I can remember. And ever since I was a child, I've watched friends of my family disappear, board members executed, an entire train car full of dust stolen. And every day, my father would come home furious, and that made for a very difficult childhood. Everyone present, even Knuckles and Blake, had sympathetic expressions towards Weiss, even as RWBY walked up to her to try and provide some form of comfort. Weiss, she tried to put her hand on her partner's shoulder, but Weiss rejected it. No, you want to know why I hate the White Fang? It's because they're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers. Well, maybe we were just tired of the exact same thing happening to us. Blake shouted. That caused all tension in the room to suddenly turn into shock as all eyes went wide and set on Blake. It was then that she realized what she just said. She then quickly left a shadow clone of herself as she ran out of the dorm as fast as she could. Wait, Blake, come back. RWBY tried to get her, but she had already vanished completely. I'll go find her. Sonic was ready to run after her, but Knuckles stopped him. No, I'll handle it. Knuckles, Tails tried to speak. Trust me, he said before leaping out the open window and gliding away. As he left, Amy and Yang in particular glanced toward Weiss, who had an unsure expression on her face. Blake had already made her way to the Academy's courtyard, coming to a stop just at the main statue. She took a moment to look at it, the statue of a huntsman and huntress standing proudly over a defeated Grimm. She had always admired the huntsmen and what they stood for, or rather what they're supposed to stand for, justice. It was one of the reasons she wanted to become one. Why she left home, the White Fang, and even her parents. But now, all she could feel was shame. She slowly reached up toward her bow. Blake. She stopped as she turned around in surprise to see Knuckles landing near her. She was about to turn around and run away, but he already dashed in front of her. Wait, stop. I don't want to cause trouble. I just want to talk. He quickly told her. Blake looked surprised for a moment before Knuckles spoke again, gazing at the bow on her head. You're a Faunus. She only looked away in response. To be honest, I kinda had a feeling you were long before today. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? She asked meekly, trying to avoid his gaze. It felt personal, and I didn't feel it was my place to pry. Knuckles answered. But I didn't know you were part of the White Fang. I'm not anymore. And that's why I'm here. I just want to talk. Knuckles repeated. No criticism, no arguments, no discrimination, just you and me. Whatever you have to say or get off your chest, I'll listen. She still couldn't meet his gaze. Why? Why do you want to listen? Because I think I know a bit of what you're going through. He told her. To be a part of something that may have been just in the past but quickly became corrupt. And, to have a personal past that you're not proud of. Let me your story, and I'll tell you mine. I want to get to know you, the real you. This seemed enough for Blake to lower her guard slightly. Still keeping her back toward him, she untied her bow from her head, holding the ribbon in her hand as she turned to face him, tears in her eyes, and her cat ears completely visible to him. He had a serious yet understanding expression on his face. Not here, she spoke. Wherever you like. He nodded in understanding. Mind if I tag along too? A third voice spoke up, catching their attention. The next day, Blake and Knuckles sat at a table at a cafe in the city of Vale, with an unwelcome third guest. Blake had a serious expression while Knuckles gave a partial glare towards the monkey Faunus. "What's with the angry looks? It's not like I've done anything. This is a private and personal discussion," Knuckles told him. "It would be a lot more comfortable if it wasn't shared with a complete stranger." "I'm not a stranger. You guys saw me, yesterday. All we know is that you are a stowaway who came to Vale for unknown reasons," Knuckles said. "We don't even know your name." "Oh, well in that case, my name is Sun Wukong. I'm from Haven Academy." "You're a student?" Blake asked in surprise as even Knuckles raised an eyebrow in curiosity. "Yep. Then why did you stow away on that cargo ship?" Blake asked. "You could have just come in legally like everyone else. Where's the fun in that?" Sun replied. Knuckles groaned as he pressed his hand against his face. "Just because we know your name now, and that you're a huntsman in training doesn't mean you can butt in on a private conversation like this. Come on, you make me sound like a home wrecker," Sun said. "There's also the fact that you apparently followed Blake back to Beacon last night," Knuckles pointed out. "On paper that makes you seem more like a stalker than a home wrecker." Even Sun winced slightly. Okay, I can see where you think that. But, look, I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I see someone who's upset." He looked towards Blake in particular. "And I just want to help, that's all." Knuckles then glanced toward Blake, silently asking her what she thinks about this. "He's probably not going to leave until he hears this, so let him stay," she said with some reluctance. "If that's all right with you." Knuckles accepted. "Geez, try to lighten up a bit," Sun commented. "Perhaps you should take this seriously," Knuckles told him before looking to Blake and giving a nod. She took a deep breath before speaking. "Sun, are you familiar with the White Fang?" "Of course. I don't think there's a Faunus on the planet who hasn't heard of them. Stupid, hole-in-their-heart creeps who use force to get whatever they want. A bunch of freaks if you ask me," Sun replied, sipping some coffee with his tail. Blake took a sip of her own coffee before responding. "I was once a member of the White Fang." Sun choked a bit on his coffee. Wait, you were a member of the White Fang." She was, and while their actions now are inexcusable, they weren't always a terrorist organization, Knuckles said before turning to Blake. "Isn't that right?" "That's right," Blake confirmed before telling her story. In the ashes of war, the White Fang was meant to be a symbol of peace and unity between humans and the Faunus. Of course, despite being promised equality, the Faunus were still subjected to discrimination and hate. Humanity still thought of us as lesser beings, akin to real animals, up to the point we were still put in cages, and even hunted and poached for sport. Some Faunus people I knew even had their tails, horns, and ears cut off and taken as trophies. Some were even skinned alive, their pelts taken for the same reason. The White Fang rose up as the voice of our people. We originally restrained ourselves to peaceful protests, deciding not to stoop to the same level as humanity. Even as a child, I was at the front of every rally, I took part in every boycott, and I actually thought we were making a difference. But that didn't stop humanity from stooping even lower to try and silence you, right?" Knuckles assumed. "Right." Blake looked away, anger burning in her eyes. "Many of those protests were met with swords and guns. We were shot at, killed, just for speaking out." She clenched her fists, trying her best to maintain something of a calm demeanor before speaking again. 5 years ago, our old leader stepped down, and a new leader took his place. And she had a different way of thinking. Humanity attacked us first, so we decided to fight back. Our peaceful protests turned into organized attacks, setting fire to shops that refused to serve us, hijacking cargo from companies that used Faunus labor, particularly the Schnee Dust Company. And the worst part was, it was working. We were being treated like equals, but not out of respect. Out of fear. Sun was rendered speechless while Knuckles had an understanding expression, listening carefully to every word. "So, I left. I decided I no longer wanted to use my skills to aid in their violence. And instead, I would dedicate my life to becoming a huntress. So here I am, a criminal hiding in plain view, all with the help of a little black bow. That must have been hard." "I'm sorry," Knuckles said. "Thanks." Blake nodded. "So, did you tell your friends any of this?" Sun asked. It's complicated, Blake replied. I understand, more than you can know. Knuckles told Blake. My people were like that once too. Your people? Sun asked. He's not from around here. Blake briefly told Sun before turning toward Knuckles. Last night, you said you knew where I was coming from. What exactly did you mean by that? Knuckles shifted in his seat a bit before beginning. My ancestors were a tribe of warriors known as the Knuckles clan, founded over 3,000 years ago. Our tribe was pretty small, at least in comparison to some of the neighboring countries. Many of those countries however fought each other for dominance over the land, and our tribe was often caught in the middle. We were able to hold our own, but that current chief at the time insisted that we'd only defend ourselves and take no part in any wars, believing they would lead to our destruction. When she passed away, her son, Pachacamac, took over, and he also had a different way of doing things. Pachacamac was a tactical genius that combined with the natural strength and power of my people, and they were able to take down all the surrounding warlords. It was an age of prosperity and strength for the Knuckles clan. But, upon seeing how strong they really were and the potential they had, Pachacamac decided to expand the tribe's borders. And by that, I mean he decided to conquer the rest of the world. The Knuckles clan went from a tribe to an empire, committing war crimes and atrocities wherever they went, believing their superior strength gave them the right to take what they want, with Pachacamac justifying it, saying it was necessary for the survival of his people. Wow, sounds like a jerk. Sun commented, with Blake listening to every word. He was a warmongering psychopath. Knuckles said. Up to the point where he dared to anger our guardian deity. Deity? Blake questioned in surprise. As in, a god? Yeah, Knuckles confirmed. Within, in the center of our tribe's homeland, was an altar occupied by native creatures called Chow. And within that altar was the ultimate power, the 7 Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald. These gemstones were and still are the greatest and most powerful objects in our world. One Chaos Emerald alone could give a single warrior enough power to take on small armies. All 7 together, you'd have the powers of a god. Both Blake and Sun's eyes widened in shock. These emeralds were protected by the guardian deity of our people, known as Chaos. Knuckles continued. Pachacamac's daughter, Tikal, had befriended Chaos. She was nothing like her father. She wanted to stop the war, stop the fighting, but her voice fell on deaf ears. Deciding the power he had wasn't enough, Pachacamac attacked the altar and tried to steal the emeralds, even running down the Chow and his own daughter to do it. This enraged Chaos, to the point where he himself used the power of the emeralds to destroy the entire Knuckles clan. If they weren't shocked before, they were now. An entire civilization wiped out overnight. Knuckles went on. All because of their foolish desires for power. Chaos would have destroyed the rest of the world too, but Tikal was able to stop him, at personal cost. He looked away slightly before continuing. There were only a handful of survivors, and humbled by their experience, they dedicated their lives to protecting the Master Emerald and Chaos Emeralds, and eventually that led to me. I don't. Blake was at a loss for words. Knuckles, I don't know what to say. Knuckles nodded briefly. And I'm not exactly innocent either. When Sonic and I first met, the two of us were enemies. A madman named Dr. Eggman had intended to steal the Master Emerald, my sole duty being to guard it. He tricked me into thinking Sonic was going to steal it, and like a naive fool, I believed him. And when the two of us fought each other, Eggman stole the emerald right under my nose. He would have destroyed the world with its power the same way my ancestors almost did. But Sonic and I were able to stop him. And back then wasn't the only time. I've been tricked several times, which has led me into fights that could have been avoided had I simply sat down and talked with the other party. Is that why you wanted to talk to me about the White Fang? Blake asked. I do get where you're coming from, I really do. Knuckles told him. But yes, I've heard everything about them from humanity's point of view, and they're not wrong in the fact that the White Fang have crossed several lines. But, things aren't so black and white. And I've made it my personal motivation to try and understand both sides of the story, such as a former member of the White Fang. He gestured toward her. Humanity isn't so innocent either, having pushed the White Fang to take such drastic measures, which only further feeds the cycle of violence and hate. Blake gave a sigh before a small smile formed on her face. Thanks Knuckles, for listening. I really appreciate that. Of course. Knuckles gave a nod and a smile too. Hey, quick question. Sun raised his hand. If it's your solemn duty to guard this Master Emerald thing, and you're here now, aren't you kinda ditching your responsibility? Rather than be offended or angered, Knuckles chuckled. I have a friend who's covering for me, acting as a pseudo-guardian of sorts. And, now that I think about, she's a lot like you, Blake. He spoke to the cat faunus girl. I feel like the two of you would have gotten along pretty well. While Blake did smile and appreciate that, she also couldn't help but look away slightly, especially with Knuckles' use of the word, friend. It made her think back to her own team, but could she even go back to them? With them knowing she's a former member of the White Fang. Blake. RWBY tried to call out for her teammate as she, Young, Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Weiss searched the city of Vale. Where are you? I'm sure she's fine. She's a big girl and she has a big strong guy with her. Weiss said. Come on Weiss, you can at least act like you're concerned. Amy told her. You're not even trying to help. Hey, you know who could really help? The police. Weiss said, causing everyone else to glare at her. What? It was just an idea. It was a bad one and you know it. Amy responded. What? You want to throw her in jail or something? I didn't say that. Weiss argued. You were thinking it. Amy countered. Well, one of us happens to have the ability to run at the speed of sound. Weiss stated, gesturing to Sonic. You could have combed the entire city by now. I trust that Knuckles knows what he's doing. Sonic said. This way, he can do what he needs to do, and we can find them without butting in. You do know what trust is, right Weiss? Of course, I know what trust is. The heiress replied hotly. Why are you talking to me about that when you all heard clearly that Blake is a part of the White Fang? How are you not suspicious of her for that? We don't know the whole story. Tails said. Rather jump to conclusions, we should hear her out. Exactly. Yang agreed. She's been a part of our team for months. At the very least, we should give her the benefit of the doubt. Well, I think when we hear her side of the story, you're all going to realize that I was right. Weiss insisted. And I think that Weiss' hair looks wonderful today, Penny said, suddenly appearing behind them, much to their shock. Ah, Penny, where did you come from? RWBY comically screamed. How did we not notice her? Sonic muttered. She could give Shadow a run for his money. Hi everyone, what are you up to? Penny asked in a friendly fashion. We're looking for our friends, Blake and Knuckles. Tails answered. Oh, that red man with the big fists and the faunus girl. Penny said. Wait, how did you know that? RWBY asked. That cat ears. Penny pointed to the top of her own head for emphasis. What cat ears? Yang asked. She wears a bow, she said, coming to a sudden realization. Wait, hold on a second, are you only just figuring that out now? Sonic asked. What do you mean? RWBY asked. Sonic, Tails, and Amy exchanged glances before the blue hedgehog answered. Dude, we figured out she was a faunus since day one. What? Weiss exclaimed as RWBY and Yang also looked in shock. Why didn't you say anything? I thought it was obvious. Sonic pointed out. Most of her meals have fish, I even saw her eat tuna out of a can once. It's not my fault you're so slow. I even heard her purr once. Tails added. It was actually kinda cute. As for why she wears that bow, maybe she doesn't want to be bullied for being a faunus, you know, kinda like some of your classmates. Amy said, casting a knowing glance towards Weiss, who looked away with crossed arms in a huff. So, where are Blake and Knuckles? Penny asked. Blake ran off last night, and Knuckles went after her. We haven't seen either of them since. RWBY answered. Penny gasped. That's terrible. She ran up to the surprised RWBY, grabbing her by the arms. Well, don't you worry, RWBY my friend. I won't rest until I help find your teammates. Okay, maybe some extra help won't hurt. Sonic seemed alright with it. You're so casual about it. Weiss said. Hey, nothing wrong with an extra set of eyes. Sonic said. Let's split up and cover more ground. RWBY, Tails, and Penny are with me. Amy, you go with Yang and Weiss, keep an eye on the Ice Queen too. Hey, Weiss protested before the group split off. Meanwhile, Knuckles, Blake, and Sun walked away from the cafe. So, what's the plan? Knuckles asked Blake. She sighed. Do you really think the White Fang is behind these robberies? They've never needed that much dust before. Oh, they are. The trio suddenly looked up to a lamppost behind them to see RWBY sitting casually at the top of it. These guys are gearing up for something big. RWBY, why am I not surprised? Knuckles commented as she leapt down. Who's your new friend? She asked, referring to the monkey Faunus. Name's Sun, nice to meet ya. He greeted with a smile. What do you mean the White Fang's gearing up for something big? Blake asked RWBY, getting back to the point. We heard some whispers about them trying to hijack an SDC freighter coming in tonight. RWBY answered. And given how those two groups are at war with each other, it seems the most likely place to find them. I've heard that too, Sun added. Supposed to be a huge dust shipment. Oh, and that's not all we've heard. RWBY said. Something about, the big boss is coming in to oversee the whole thing. Big boss? Knuckles questioned, sharing a glance with Blake. The current leader of the White Fang. Don't know, didn't hear a name. RWBY responded. But it might be a good chance to figure out what those guys are up to. Right, little Miss Belladonna. Blake narrowed her eyes at RWBY, understanding what she was implying. Hey, I'm a professional spy back home. Familial connections like that pretty easy for someone like me. So you know she's former White Fang. Knuckles said with a slight glare. Don't worry, Shadow's not gonna interrogate her. He knows she's not with them anymore. RWBY told him. But, he will be at the shipyard tonight, Omega's already there on standby. You guys wanna come, maybe bust this thing wide open. I'm in. Sounds like fun. Sun grinned. Blake. Knuckles looked towards her. He was already on board with finding out what the White Fang were up to and stopping them, but he also wanted to know what she felt about it. Though she looked conflicted at first, her expression became steeled with resolve. I'm in. Weiss, Amy, and Yang had exited out of shop, having found nothing on the whereabouts of their friends. Thanks anyways, Amy told the shop owner before closing the door. Well, that's another dead end, Yang practically sulked, before looking at Weiss, who seemed just as indifferent as before. You really don't care if we find her, do you? Don't be stupid, of course I do. Weiss replied. I'm just afraid of what we'll say when we find her. Weiss, you have every reason to be upset at the White Fang. Amy told her. But you don't even know Blake's whole story. The White Fang didn't start out as a terrorist group, they only used protests first and only just recently began using force. Even if Blake was one of them, she might have left when they changed their methods because even she might know they go too far. If that's true, she would have said something sooner. Weiss countered. The innocent never run. Unless you don't give them the choice. A certain black and red hedgehog had appeared out of nowhere, approaching the group with a scowl on his face, which seemed directed toward Weiss in particular. Shadow. Amy looked in surprise. What are you doing here? Yang also asked. Blake Belladonna is former White Fang. Shadow said, much to their surprise. I've done my research. Her father was the previous leader, in fact. That took them by further surprise. His methods were strictly pacifist, using protests and boycotts to get his message of equality across. But his position taken by Sienna Khan, who suggested fighting back, and the majority rallied behind her. See, Weiss told Yang and Amy. I'm not the only one who thinks. Just as the Schnee Dust Company's current leadership has made their monopoly into a corrupt business that has been spearheading Faunus discrimination for years, long before the White Fang took arms. Shadow interrupted, glaring at Weiss, causing her to scoff in surprise. What are you? Faunus labor paid even below minimum wage, borderline illegal. Shadow continued. Unsafe work conditions, high accident and even fatality rates among said Faunus labor. They receive little to no compensation or insurance in comparison to their human superiors. Humans who have more power in that company, humans who subject the Faunus to essential slave labor, humans who do everything in their power to gain more and more financial success than any other business on this planet, even resorting to questionable and illegal methods, which are often overlooked by those in power who are in their pocket. Listen you. Weiss tried to say something, but Shadow wasn't done yet. That includes this planet's only military. The Army of Atlas has been a business partner of the Schnee Dust Company for years, allowing them to contract their own private branch of the military for their own personal force. If they wanted to, both could have the power to not only completely obliterate the White Fang, but even resort to the genocide of the entire Faunus race, down to the last child. The SDC takes what it wants and won't hesitate to stoop to stinkingly low methods to get what they want, ruining countless lives in their wake. With that said, how does that make them any different from the White Fang? If anything, the fact they have more power to abuse makes them worse. How dare you? Weiss shouted. We are not terrorists. We don't go around murdering people. She was interrupted when Shadow shoved something into her chest, with enough force to push her back to the wall. She was about to say something, only to see there was a large envelope in her hands. Hey, what's your problem? Yang tried to march over to Shadow. Even if she didn't agree with Weiss right now, she didn't like seeing her teammate getting pushed around. Stay out of this, Shadow exclaimed, pointing at Yang and glaring at her with his red eyes. She was shocked and startled by his tone, but quickly became angered by it. Her own eyes briefly flashed red as well as it looked like things would escalate, but Amy quickly grabbed her by the arm. Yang, don't. But, trust me, Amy insisted. You don't want to get in his way when he's in this mood. And you definitely do not want to pick a fight with him. With great reluctance, Yang calmed down, her eyes turning back to their natural lilac color, but she still maintained a glare on Shadow, who ignored her as he gave a brief nod of acknowledgement toward Amy before turning back to Weiss. What is this? She questioned as she stood up, referring to the envelope. Open it, Shadow told her. What are you? Open it, he exclaimed. Startled by his anger, Weiss opened the envelope and pulled out its contents, revealed to be a series of photographs. But what she saw on them caused her to gasp in shock and even cover her mouth with her hands as she dropped the pictures. These photos were of various hate crimes and lynchings being conducted by humans on Faunus. One had a fox Faunus tied and hung by a tree branch and beaten by people with sticks like a piñata. Another was a photo of Faunus children of various types being forced into cages. They were covered in blood as human males holding knives had cut off some of their extra features such as horns, claws, and even tails. One particular grotesque photo showed a skinned corpse of a Faunus with a huntsman holding up a pelt of lizard skin proudly like a trophy. Even Yang and Amy looked in horror as they saw the dropped photos on the ground. Look at them, Shadow told Weiss. Look at what your kind has done to them. I've done my research, all those Faunus weren't even part of the White Fang, and even more disgusting is that some of those people were employed by the Schnee Dust Company. They might not have high positions of power in your company, and some might have even been arrested for those crimes, but it doesn't change what they did. You accuse the Faunus of being corrupt and distrustful. Humanity has proven to be just as savage if not more so for thousands of years, and they still haven't changed. And it's not just with the Faunus, it's with your own kind too. How many people have your fellow humans killed? How many businesses and lives have the SDC ruined by absorbing them into their conglomerate or even driving them to the ground and out of business? The fact that they are still spearheading discrimination shows that they are just as corrupt and dangerous as you claim the White Fang to be. You want to know why the White Fang do what they do? Because they feel that their protests weren't enough. Because they feel that your company, your family's company, and other humans like you, have given them no other choice. But I, Weiss was at a complete loss of words, reeling from the horror of the pictures before her, as well as every word that the black hedgehog had hammered into her. They've killed innocent people too, friends of mine. And you have a right to mourn them. You have the right to be angry at the White Fang as they too have crossed just as many ethical and moral lines. Shadow granted. But, by refusing to acknowledge the crimes committed by not only your own company, but by your entire species, by choosing only to see things in black and white, you have proven no different from those people. I haven't killed anybody, Weiss yelled, tears of fury in her eyes. I'm not a murderer. But that could change, Shadow replied, keeping his glare on Weiss. You are the heiress to your father's company. My grandfather's company, Weiss insisted. Your grandfather is dead, and your father is in charge. The SDC is currently under his control. Shadow continued. If you end up inheriting that conglomerate, as well as hone your skills as a huntress, but most of all, if you keep up this mentality and refuse to see things any other way, you could very well become worse than your father. You could take control of the SDC and Atlas military, which is possible given the position your elder sister is in, and commit genocide upon all the Faunus. I would never do anything like that. She was practically bailing now. Weiss cried tears, not of sadness, but of anger. Anger at her father and the years of abuse he put her through since childhood. I'm not my father. I don't want to be my father. I don't want to be a horrible person, she said, breaking down, her legs shaking. Then prove it, Shadow told her, causing her to look in surprise. You have a chance to prove to be different. Your teammate is a Faunus and former White Fang. You have the chance now to try and make peace. Talk to her, listen to her, try to understand her point of view. Just that alone will prove you infinitely better than your father, and most of your species. Make the effort to understand, do what the most of humanity refuses to do, and break the cycle. Or don't and remain isolated in your bigotry and discriminatory views, human. Shadow then turned to walk away, leaving the speechless Weiss alone. He passed by Yang and Amy before stopping briefly to address them. Rouge has met up with Knuckles and Belladonna. He revealed, causing them to look in surprise. The White Fang are planning on hijacking a dust shipment at the shipyard tonight and they intend to be there, as do I. You want to tell Sonic and the others, or even join us, feel free. With that, the ultimate life form sped away, leaving an energy trail of red behind before it and him vanished without so much of a trace left. Whoa, that was all Yang could say, having listened to everything Shadow said, but being unable to form a response of some kind. That was, whoa, he really hates humanity, doesn't he? Shadow knows there are good humans out there. Amy explained. Both in our world and Remnant, he knows not all humans are evil. But, at the same time, he has seen the worst in humanity. He's even a victim himself in that regard. People in power have hurt him, really, really badly. Amy knew the reason Shadow had such an opinion on most of humanity, all her friends knew. And we've seen people go too far too. What the White Fang is doing now is wrong, but what people have done to them in the past is just as wrong. Yeah, I think I get it. Yang seemed to understand. She turned and slowly walked over toward Weiss as she saw her pick up the photos from the ground and look at them, deep in thought. Weiss, are you okay? She didn't answer right away, but she did put the photos back in the envelope, albeit with shaky hands. The images and words from Shadow clearly had an effect on her. Let's just find Blake. Amy and Yang shared glances before the latter put a hand on her shoulder. Hey, if you want to talk, we're here to listen. You're our friend too. I know, Weiss nodded before walking away, with Yang and Amy right behind her. At the same time, Penny had continued to accompany Sonic, RWBY, and Tails in their search, and had some questions to ask them. So, Blake is your friend? Yes, Penny. RWBY answered in a semi-annoyed sigh. But you are all mad at her? She asked again. No, nobody's mad, Tails said. It's complicated. Blake's apparently got some baggage and is having a rough time trying to get over it. Sonic summed up. We're just trying to find and help her. Baggage. Is she carrying something heavy? Penny asked in confusion. No, not like that. Tails explained. It means she's upset and confused right now. Oh, I see. Penny nodded. Why is she upset? Well, Blake might not be who we thought she was. RWBY answered. Penny gave an audible gasp. Is she a man? Sonic struggled to hold back his laughter at that. And no, it's not like that, he did his best to calm down. Tails elbowed him to get him to stop laughing. Sorry, he calmed down. I'm not sure what she is. RWBY said. She didn't exactly give a detailed explanation before she ran away. I don't have many friends. Penny revealed. But if I did, I would want them to talk to me about things. Me too, RWBY said, looking away. Hey, listen RWBY. Sonic got her attention. Let me give you some advice on this. We'll find Blake, and when we do, let her know that you care. What do you mean? RWBY asked, not sure what he meant by that. Talk to her, Sonic explained. Let her know that no matter what, you still consider a friend, even if she doesn't. And that you're there for her if she needs anything, someone to talk to, someone to ask help from, or even just a shoulder to lean on. Be there for her. You'd be surprised how much an effect that can have on people. He spared a glance towards Tails, who smiled and nodded back. The first step to helping a friend, is reminding them that they're not alone. This seemed to lift RWBY's spirit a bit, already giving her an idea of what to say to Blake when they find her. Thanks Sonic. No problem, it's what friends do. Sonic smiled. He then felt a buzz on his side and took out his scroll to see a message from Amy, which he quickly read and smirked. And what better way for friends to bond, than by beating up bad guys? Night had fallen as Knuckles, Rouge, Blake, and Sun had arrived at the shipping yard, the four of them lying flattened on the rooftop of one of the warehouses in the port. The SDC shipment had already arrived, now they just need to wait for the enemy. "We're in position," Rouge reported to her teammates through their personal comms. "Affirmative. Awaiting for the enemy's arrival." Omega responded back. "Did you have to bring an extra? There's no room for dead weight here," Shadow pointed out, referring to Sun. "He was very insistent. Plus, he says he's a huntsman student like Blake here, so why not?" Rouge shrugged. She heard Shadow sigh from the other end. "His choice, then. We are not responsible if anything happens," he said before cutting off. "Don't worry, I can fight," Sun told the group. "I'm training to be a huntsman after all." "So, you keep saying," Knuckles said. "Put those words into action and I might just believe you. Here, stole you guys some food." Sun offered the group some apples. "You won't be a student for long if you keep breaking the law without a second thought," Blake pointed out. "Hey, weren't you in a cult or something?" Sun shot back at Blake, who narrowed her eyes at him. "Okay, too soon. No wonder you let him tag along," Knuckles said to Rouge. "One thief to another." "Oh, lighten up, guy." Rouge rolled her eyes. Suddenly, an unnatural gust of air blew down toward them, causing them to look upward to an incoming airship, which shined its lights upon all the cargo in the docks. From around the corner of another warehouse, Shadow pulled Omega back to avoid being seen as they, and the other four, watched the ship land and its bay doors open. Stepping out of it were 7 armed White Fang agents. "Oh no," Blake muttered. She knew it was them from Rouge, but it still pained her to see this. "I know this can't be easy," Knuckles said to her. "If you want to back out." "No." She shook her head. "I have to stop them." "Don't worry kiddo, we got your back," Rouge assured. "So, what are we waiting for? Let's go." Sun was about to leap into the fray, but Knuckles pulled him back down. "Hold it. We still need to find out who this big boss is," Knuckles said. "We go in now, they'll just run away, and we won't learn anything. We wait. Grab the tow cables. We gotta get everything ready for when he arrives," one agent ordered. "Come on, pick up the pace," somebody else spoke from within the ship, stepping out to reveal not another member of the White Fang, but the human criminal known as Roman Torchwick. "We got a lot of dust to pick up here, and not much time to get it all ready. So, why don't you animals hurry up?" "Who is that?" Knuckles questioned. "Roman Torchwick," Rouge answered. "A small-time petty crook here in Vale. I heard Sonic and RWBY talking about him," Knuckles said. "But why is he with the White Fang? He's not a Faunus." "No, he's not." Blake shook her head as she stood up, drawing one-piece gamble shroud. "They'd never work with any human, much less one like that," she said before leaping off the building. "Blake, wait." Knuckles tried to stop her, but he was too late. Damn it. He leapt off after her. "Hey, wait for me." Sun also went after them, much to Rouge's annoyance. "Shadow, we're going in. But you and Omega stay on standby. I got a feeling that things are going to escalate real soon." She contacted her leader. "This is why we don't work with children," he chastised before she also leapt off the rooftop. "No, you idiot. This isn't a leash," Torchwick told a White Fang agent who held a tow cable in his hands, only for Blake to suddenly appear behind him. She grabbed both his hands and pinned them behind his back with one hand, while holding Gamble Shroud in the other, the blade an inch from his throat. "What the? Oh, for the love of nobody move," Blake demanded, even as all 7 White Fang agents aimed their guns at her. "Whoa, take it easy there, little lady," Torchwick said mockingly. "You should heed your own advice." Knuckles appeared, facing most of the White Fang with a glare as he punched his fists together with Rouge and Sun taking up flanking positions, ready to attack at a moment's notice. Suddenly, Blake threw away her bow and revealed her cat ears to everyone. "Brothers of the White Fang, why are you aiding this scum? Why are you letting him give you orders?" Torchwick gave a laugh. "You think I'm the big boss? Sorry, but I'm just a humble guide for the man, telling him the ins and outs of Vale's lovely criminal underworld." "Oh, so, who is the big boss?" Rouge asked. A massive shadow suddenly began to loom over the entire shipping yard, causing everyone to look up in surprise to see an advanced black and red aircraft carrier far more advanced than anything Remnant has seen so far. It was twice times as large as the dropship that Torchwick and the White Fang had arrived in. A bay door opened on the bottom as 12 objects were dropped from the vessel, flanked by 16 smaller objects that flew from the opening sides of the vessel. The larger objects dropped and surrounded the group, revealing them to be a set of 12 white and black humanoid robots, standing over 2 meters tall with guns for hands, while the smaller ones were red flying machines. These were egg gunners and egg flappers respectively, all aimed their targeting lasers at Knuckles, Blake, Rouge, and Sun. "Whoa, robots!" Sun exclaimed while Blake's eyes widened. "Badniks," Rouge grimaced. "You have got to be kidding me." Knuckles' glare hardened as he glanced up to see the recognizable egg mobile approaching the scene, and a familiar laugh could be heard from its pilot. "Ah ha ha ha. Looks like you ran into a little trouble here, Torchwick," the mad scientist said with a maniacal smirk. "Eggman," Knuckles exclaimed. "Ah, Knuckles. It's been a while, and you too, my dear Rouge." Eggman greeted in a faux polite tone. "Making new friends, I see," he said upon noticing the two Faunus with him, but he happened to recognize one in particular. And one of them, just so happens to be the lovely Blake Belladonna. "How do you know my name?" She narrowed her eyes at him, keeping a firm grip on Torchwick. "Oh, a certain high-ranking member of the White Fang talks quite a bit about you," Eggman replied. "About yay tall, red hair, bull horns." Blake's face almost went pale at that description, something Rouge and Knuckles both noticed before the latter spoke out. "White Fang, whatever this man has promised you to get you to work with him, it's a lie." He tried to reason with the armed and masked Faunus. "He doesn't care about your revolution, just his own." "Ooh, and that's exactly why we're working together, because our little revolutions coincide with one another," Eggman explained with a sneer. "We both want to uproot Remnant's current hierarchy and make something new out of it. I offered the White Fang a means to have what they want, and they accepted my offer. I've already given them more advanced weaponry that makes that stuff from Atlas look like wind-up toys. They'll make an excellent addition to the Eggman Empire." Knuckles, Rouge, Blake, and even Sun, all glared at Eggman before he spoke to Blake in particular. "And you, Ms. Belladonna, as a former and influential member of the White Fang, are also welcome to join us. All I would ask is your complete and total obedience, and I can guarantee you'll live like a princess in my new world order." Blake easily saw through his facade. One look at this madman and she knew what kind of person he was. Somebody who only cares about obtaining power for himself, using anyone to get it and discarding them without a second thought, with the White Fang being his pawns in this particular scheme. She already had her answer for him. "Here's what I say to that." She aimed Gamble Shroud and fired a single bullet, which just caressed his right cheek, shaving a few hairs off his mustache. This caused all guns, be they those of White Fang or Badnik, to be aimed at her and her friends, though she still kept a firm hold of Torchwick. Though startled at first, he glared at the Faunus girl. "So, you dare to defy me, do you?" Before any of his robots could make a move, a black and red blur shot forward, already taking down 4 egg gunners while bullets tore through the air to shoot down 3 egg flappers. He looked in surprise to see who it was. "What? Shadow?" The black hedgehog appeared with a glare at the Mad Doctor with Omega right behind. "Target Eggman identified," the former Badnik reported, commencing immediate termination. He immediately fired his machine guns at the egg mobile, but a force field quickly enveloped the hovercraft to protect Eggman. "What are you idiots waiting for? Attack!" Eggman commanded his remaining Badniks and White Fang agents as they opened fire, with Team Dark and Sun being the first to charge forward and attack. Using the ensuing chaos as his opportunity, Torchwick slammed the back of his head into Blake's face, causing her to let go before he swung his cane, melodic cudgel, at her, knocking her back. He aimed and tried to fire at her but was quickly knocked back by a kick from Knuckles. He looked up with a glare to see Knuckles helping Blake to her feet before they faced him. "I already have one red problem already, I don't need another," he growled before firing an explosive shot from melodic cudgel at them. Shadow moved with such speed, already having Arondite out as he closed the distance between himself and most of the Badnik forces. He decapitated one egg gunner, crushed a second with a homing attack, sliced a third down the middle, and threw a series of chaos spears to destroy 3 egg flappers before gunning down 2 more with Arondite's rifle attachment. Omega fired streams of condensed lightning dust at the remaining 10 egg flappers that tried to fly around and shoot at him. He had already shot down 2, with streaks of residual lighting being drawn to the nearest source of metal, 2 other egg flappers, and short-circuited them out. Eggman's jet boosters easily allowed him to maneuver around the shots of the last 6 as he continued to fire more beams of lightning, destroying them in mere moments. Rouge kicked one White Fang agent in the face to knock him down before throwing out purple hearts, which spun toward 2 more agents to strike their hands and force them to drop their guns. Sun then took advantage of this to leap forward and take down both agents with precise punches and kicks. He quickly noticed the targeting lasers of the last 6 egg gunners training on him and rolled out of the way just as they opened fire, but Rouge quickly flew and smashed the one in the middle with both her feet before throwing out purple hearts once more in both directions to decapitate the remaining 5 robots around her in one fell swoop as her heart-shaped boomerangs returned to her. Sun had managed to find himself surrounded by the 4 White Fang agents in total, something Shadow noticed as he grabbed one by the face to slam him into the ground hard and knock him out. He would have gone in to deal with them himself, but Sun had already pulled out what appeared to be a mix between a staff and a nunchaku, which he spun around to slam one in the face, trip another off his feet while also slamming the end of his staff to knock that same guy into the ground while spinning on his staff to kick his feet out and take down the last 2. He gave something of a smirk toward Shadow, who simply rolled his eyes and shook his head. Torchwick continued to fire explosive dust shots from Melodic Cudgel at Blake and Knuckles, appearing to keep them at a distance. He directed most of his fire toward Blake, who flipped backwards and left a Shadow clone behind to give herself an extra boost backwards for greater distance while Knuckles tried to rush Torchwick, who turned his fire on him, but the Echidna only swerved from side to side to avoid the blasts and easily closed the gap. Torchwick tried to swing his cane at Knuckles, but the Echidna easily caught it. Even as Torchwick tried to wrench it free, Knuckles wouldn't budge with his grip. A smirk however fell on the criminal's face. "I hear you and your friends aren't from this world, right? You're aliens. Your point being?" Knuckles questioned. "I also heard that you freaks don't have aura." He aimed his cane at Knuckles' face and fired a point-blank shot, appearing to score a direct hit and engulfing the Echidna in an explosion. Knuckles. Blake's eyes widened in shock. Torchwick grinned victoriously as he tried to pull his cane back, but he still felt it being held back by something. The smoke soon began to clear to reveal Knuckles hadn't even budged an inch, or even seemed scratched in the slightest. At the most, all he had was a patch of soot covering some of his face. Both the criminal and young huntress in training looked in absolute shock as Knuckles hardened his glare at the enemy. "Do I look like I need aura?" he said before pulling his fist back and punching Torchwick as hard as he could. His own aura flashed as Knuckles' fist made contact, right before the force of the punch sent him flying and crashing through 3 sets of cargo containers before he fell off the docks and into the ocean. Blake's eyes were so wide they were almost circular. Sure, she saw Knuckles hold back a Goliath stomp with his bare hands, but to see him not only take a dust shot to the face and still remain standing while also delivering a punch like that was still quite surprise. Are you okay?" she asked, slowly walking up to him. He looked back to her with a confident and reassuring smile as he still held Melodic Cudgel in his hand. "I am completely uninjured. Don't worry, I've taken worse." He easily snapped Torchwick's cane in half in his grip. Eggman looked on to see most of his Badnik forces and White Fang agents have been taken down rather swiftly, even Torchwick was already down for the count. But he didn't seem the least bit irritated, if anything, his smirk only grew. "Well, the pawns are out of the way, time to bring in the real, The Egg Mobile was suddenly struck in the side by a familiar attack as Eggman saw a blue blur appear above him. Sonic. He saw his nemesis flip in midair before landing at the top of a cargo container to stand on equal level with the mad scientist. "Yo Eggman. Long time no see. How ya been?" Sonic greeted confidently as Tails and RWBY also arrived to stand beside him, the girl drawing crescent rows. "That's your enemy you told us about?" RWBY asked Tails. "Yep, Dr. Robotnik, aka Dr. Eggman." The young fox replied. "Ah, I see you made new friends, Hedgehog. Why am I not surprised?" Eggman noted upon seeing RWBY. No matter, it gives me the opportunity to show you what I've been working on. He slammed his fist down on a button on his Egg Mobile. Suddenly, the black and red airship that Eggman had arrived in began to descend closer to the ground, drawing the attention of Knuckles, Blake, Shadow, Rouge, Omega, and Sun as they saw it shift and change. The first notable change was a set of 4 robotic legs from its bottom as the outer hull became much sleeker but still heavily armored. What stood out the most, however, was a trio of robotic heads resembling that of a canine emerged from the front. The gigantic 3-headed dog robot landed on the ground with a large thud as all 3 heads let loose a mechanical roar. Sonic and RWBY sped toward the ground in front of the giant robot, the latter drawing her scythe as Tails flew with them. They were quickly joined by Knuckles, Blake, Sun, and Team Dark. "Is that a giant robot dog?" Sun exclaimed as Blake was put in a stunned silent stupor. "A giant robot 3-headed dog," RWBY also exclaimed. "That is a rather unique robotic design," Penny said, popping up out of nowhere, much to the whole group's surprise. "Wah, Penny, what are you doing here?" Tails exclaimed. "You had said this would be a good bonding experience among friends," Penny replied. Eggman laughed as his Egg Mobile attached itself to an opening on the giant robot's back. "Remnant has so much to offer me, most especially its unique natural resource of dust. I've already managed to implement it into this lovely little prototype. Behold, the Egg Cerberus. Crush them," he commanded, pressing the attack button on his Egg Mobile, causing the giant robot to roar as all 3 of its mouths opened. The one in the center shot a stream of fire, the one on the left unleashed a blast of ice crystals, while the one on the right fired bolts of lightning. "Scatter," Shadow ordered, causing the group to split off in multiple directions to avoid the explosive elemental blasts that already lit up most of the shipping yard. The Egg Cerberus went on the attack, charging forward to the group comprising of Sonic, RWBY, and Blake. The blue hedgehog quickly picked up both girls and ran away just as the Egg Cerberus bashed through some shipping containers and a loading crane, before skidding to halt and turning around to blast fire from its central mouth, twisting it around to spread waves of flame. Tails, Rouge, and Sun, being the closest, flew or leapt up to avoid the waves of fire, with Sun firing a shotgun blast from his staff to propel himself even higher onto a nearby rooftop. The left head then aimed upward to fire a stream of cyan-colored dust energy, which quickly condensed and changed into a rain of icicles that fell toward the area where Knuckles, Shadow, Omega, and Penny were located. Omega fired explosive fire dust bombs from his guns to intercept most of the icicles, while Shadow threw more Chaos Spear to take care of the rest. "That is a highly destructive machine right there," Penny pointed out. "Kid, you need to get out of here. Now," Knuckles told her. "This is no place for children. Leave," Shadow also insisted. "Do not worry." Penny walked forward just as the icicle attack came to an end, her eyes narrowing at the Egg Cerberus. "I'm combat ready." As soon as she said that, a compartment in her backpack opened up to produce a single sword, which split up into a total of 10 separate blades, all connecting to Penny's back via thin wire cables. Much to the surprise of Knuckles and Shadow, even Omega directed his attention toward her. She moved the swords out in front of her with gestures of her hands. The blades pointed outward and spun around rapidly, generating a large pulse of green energy. She threw her fists forward and fired a massive energy beam. What? Eggman was caught by surprise as the side of the Egg Cerberus was struck by Penny's attack, blasting with enough force to push it back, almost close to the edge of the shipping yard with the water below. However, the Egg Cerberus dug its claws into the ground, anchoring itself so it wouldn't be pushed over just as Penny's attack ceased. The dust cleared to reveal the side of the hull that was struck by Penny's attack was only moderately damaged at most. "Whoa," Sonic muttered in surprise, everyone seeing Penny's attack with just as much surprise. "Combat ready is right, that was awesome." He grinned. Eggman growled slightly as his targeting systems locked on Penny. "Two can play at that game." The Egg Cerberus' right mouth opened up to generate a similar attack, with a sphere of lightning before it fired a condensed shot toward Penny and her group. Shadow acted quickly enough to run and grab Penny, moving out of the way just as Knuckles and Omega dodged as well. However, this also happened to strike a stack of dust containers, lighting up all the dust inside and causing it to explode, sending large pieces of debris flying up into the air and all over the area. Everyone moved to avoid the falling debris however they could, but Blake happened to trip up on a piece of rubble and looked in shock to see some debris falling toward her. Blake. RWBY was about to speed over and assist her. Suddenly, a black glyph appeared above Blake just as the debris struck, repelling it and sending it flying back up and into the water. In that same instant, Eggman heard a pair of yells, along with accompanying gunshots, and glanced behind to see Yang and Amy, the later using shotgun blasts from Ember Celica as Amy held onto her. They landed on the back of Egg Cerberus, just above Eggman's cockpit as they tried to bring their respective weapons onto him, only for a shield to block the gauntlets and hammer. Nah. Eggman shook his finger with a grin. Hard light dust shields. Now who's ready for a ride, ladies? The Egg Cerberus roared once again as it ran like a bat out of hell, in an attempt to shake off Yang and Amy as they held onto whatever they could. At the same time, the three-headed dog-like mech tried to ram and crush everyone else on the ground. Blake, who was still stunned by the sudden save, looked in even further surprised to see a familiar hand extended toward her. Weiss. She absent-mindedly accepted her hand and stood up as RWBY and Sonic joined her. Why did? Okay, look, we obviously have a lot to talk about, Weiss began. But, I'm certain that we can both agree that, whatever the hell that thing is, she pointed towards the rampaging Egg Cerberus. It takes priority. So, for the moment, can we put our disagreement to the side and work together to stop that thing before somebody gets hurt? And after that, maybe we can have a heart-to-heart. Deal. Though still surprised, Blake knew Weiss was right about this. Eggman takes priority, everything else can wait. So, with a firm resolve, she nodded in agreement. Deal. RWBY and Sonic exchanged brief smiles before getting back to the situation at hand. Okay, we gotta get organized, Sonic said as Tails hovered above them. Tails, try and break that thing down. Okay, Tails began. It's heavily armored, so nothing we have can do any damage. In fact, it looks like Penny's attack barely broke through. That armor seems to serve as good offense too, made for bashing and crushing, but its primary weapon appears to be its long-range dust attacks, fire in the middle, ice on the left, and lightning on the right. Alright, did you guys get all that? Sonic spoke to the rest of his team over the comms, and even Team Dark. Yes, Shadow reported as he and Knuckles dodged another charge of the Egg Cerberus. The force was enough to throw off Amy and Yang. Fortunately, Rouge flew in and was able to catch them both and set them on the semi-destroyed rooftop of the warehouse. Omega, scan it. Find its power source as well as its dust munitions. Acknowledged. Omega did a quick scan of the Egg Cerberus before it fired a shot of ice from its left mouth, which Penny defended as she landed in front of Omega to spin her tethered blades out like a shield. I have completed the scan. Dust munitions are located within the throats of each head, and the unit's central power source appears to be a Chaos Emerald. That got the attention of everyone on their team. A Chaos Emerald? Weiss asked, not quite understanding what she heard over the comms. Though Blake remembered the story Knuckles told her. One of 7 gemstones that can grant incredible power. We'll explain later, Sonic quickly said. Now we just need a plan. Wait, I think I got one. RWBY said to Sonic as she turned to her partner. Weiss, can you make 3 separate glyphs at the same time? Try and force that thing's mouths open. I can if it can stay still long enough. She confirmed. Okay, we'll all split up and attack from all directions, divide Eggman's attention. RWBY explained as Sonic opened the comms and allowed her to speak to everyone and relay her plan. Weiss, Blake, and I will attack the front, getting the attention of the middle head. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles do the same for the right. Shadow, Rouge, and Omega take the left. Yang, Amy, you and Blake's new friend try and attack Eggman directly. Penny, are those swords of yours connected by wires or something? They are indeed. Penny relayed, hearing RWBY's instructions through Omega's speakers. Alright, you go at that thing's underbelly while it's distracted. Try and tie its legs together or something to keep it from moving around. RWBY continued. If he gets mad enough, Eggman might fire everything at once. Weiss will use her glyphs to force all its mouths open, while Sonic, Shadow, and I fire down each of its throats at the same time. That should cause all the dust inside to explode and destroy it. That's actually a very good strategy. Weiss agreed. That could work. Tails nodded. Great idea. Sonic grinned as Blake also nodded in agreement. An impressive plan. Even Shadow had to admit it. That's my little sis. Yang smirked with pride. Let's do it. Knuckles grinned. Oh, my name is Sun, by the way. Not Blake's new friend. Sun put in. Alright, less talking, more moving people. Let's go. Rouge said as the entire group ran forward and began to encircle the egg Cerberus from all sides. Eggman grinned maniacally from inside his cockpit. You kids wanna play, huh? Okay. Let's play. He pressed all the buttons he could, causing the egg Cerberus to go on the attack, launching long-ranged attacks from each of its mouths at the heroes. Up front, RWBY, Weiss, and Blake used their respective semblances and weapons to dodge the blasts of fire shot at them before making their way to the top of a crane, where they fired their own long-ranged attacks, gunshots from Crescent Rose and Gamble Shroud, while Weiss swung Myrtanaster to send out waves of her own dust attacks. All attacks hit the front of the egg Cerberus but didn't seem to do much damage. On the right side, Sonic drew Caliburn as he attacked the right head with a homing attack, before slashing his sword at its face as Knuckles ran up, drawing Galatine as he leapt forward and plunged one axe into the hull of the side to slice at it. The right head swung around to knock Knuckles off before firing a blast of lightning at the airborne Sonic, but Tails quickly flew in and briefly put Sonic down before flying up to throw some dust grenades of his own creation at the right head. While he was on the ground, Sonic noticed a piece of thin, broken metal. He picked it up and could see that it was rather long as well, with both ends rather sharp. An idea came to his head as he ran around in literal circles around this particular area, dragging the end of the scrap metal along the ground, causing it to heat up from the friction. On the left side, Omega unleashed a volley of rockets along the egg Cerberus hull, making it seem like he was trying to break through. Once the volley stopped, Rouge flew in to plant some of her explosives in that same spot, leaping back to avoid the resulting blasts, which did seem to break through that portion of the armor. Shadow then leapt up at the left head, landing on top of it and drove Arondite into its forehead. The left head roared as it tried to shake Shadow off. Penny quickly made her way underneath the Cerberus underbelly. With it being attacked from all sides, it didn't seem to be going anywhere. She produced her various blades again, this time a set of 16, and sent 4 out in each direction. 4 of the blades tangled around each leg, tying the cables around them before the blades themselves stuck into the armor, piercing through a bit. From the top, Eggman gasped in shock as Yang, Amy, and Sun appeared above his cockpit. Hey Doc, ready for an appointment in intense physical therapy. Yang cracked as she tried to punch the glass cockpit of his egg mobile, but once again, struck a barrier of hard light dust. But that didn't stop her from pounding her fists and shots from Ember Celica into the shield, with Amy doing the same with her Pico Pico hammer. Even Sun used his staff shotgun weapon to attack the shield, which didn't seem to show any signs of breaking. You kids never learn, do you? Eggman sneered. Trying to encircle me. I'll just bash my way. But when he tried to use the controls to move the egg Cerberus away, his screens turned red to show an alarm. What? A malfunction in the legs. Now. No, wait, he turned on the monitors to see Penny underneath, using her own strength with her cabled swords to force the legs to hold still, bringing her hands together to try and bring the legs closer and pin them. How can one little girl? This is difficult, Penny said, sounding strained. It is strong, even for me. Growling in frustration from the constant attacks, especially the ones aimed directly at him, Eggman slammed his fists on all the controls. Fire everything. Fire everything. All 3 of its mouths opened at the same time, preparing to unleash a massive attack. Just as they planned. Weiss. Now. RWBY told her. The Eris aimed Myrtanaster at the egg Cerberus and focused. 3 flattened vertical glyphs manifested in each of its mouths and not only forced them open, but kept the attacks back, creating a buildup of fire, ice, and lightning in each respective mouth. What? System backfire. Are they trying to cause an overload? Eggman exclaimed. Sonic. Shadow. RWBY yelled at the top of her lungs, hoping they could hear her, and they did. With nods, both hedgehogs sped toward each of the forced open mouths. From the left side, Shadow leapt into the air to throw a Chaos Spear, while Sonic did the same thing on the right side, throwing the scrap metal in his hand like a makeshift spear, the tip of it glowing red hot from all the friction he built up. In the middle, RWBY remained where she was and converted Crescent Rose into its sniper formation. Getting a lock with her scope, she fired multiple shots. All 3 attacks struck at the same time, shattering the glyphs while also breaking through and striking the dust munitions inside. This created a chain reaction, combined with the build-up from the clogged attacks. The middle head exploded and erupted into flames, traveling down the neck and toward the center. The right side surged with an overload of electricity, also traveling toward the center. The left side had multiple icicles explode from outward, breaking the head and neck from the inside as the effect traveled through the neck. No. Eject. Eject. Eggman launched his egg mobile from the egg Cerberus. Amy, Yang, and Sun also took that as their cue to jump off and get some distance from the robot. It's gonna blow. Amy yelled as all the heroes ran as fast as they could, Penny retracting her blades and ran at inhumane speeds from underneath just as the chain reaction reached the center unit. Boom. Asterisk. A large explosion of fire, ice, and lightning lit up the whole area, completely obliterating the entire mech. Fortunately, everyone was able to get enough distance and find some form of cover to avoid getting caught up in the blast. When it all settled and began to calm down, all that remained was a small pile of rubble within a blackened crater in the very middle of the now destroyed shipping yard. Whoa. Sun looked in awe as everyone came back out and grouped together. That was a lot bigger than I thought it was gonna be, RWBY commented. Nice, Rubes. Sonic ran up and gave the girl a thumbs up. I'd give that explosion a solid 10 out of 10. Your plan for total destruction was above satisfactory. I congratulate you, Omega stated. Yeah, not bad kid. Rouge smirked. That's my sis, a walking weapon of mass destruction. Come here, RWBY. Yang pulled her younger sister into a congratulatory hug. Noogies. You made a lot good calls there. Tails complimented. You took advantage of the flaws in the mech's design as well as Eggman himself, even though you only just met him. Yes, it was a good plan. Weiss had to admit, as expected from our leader. Ozpin definitely made the right call in putting you in charge. Amy added with a genuine smile. RWBY blushed at their praise. Ah, thanks guys. Don't celebrate yet, Knuckles quickly said. Where's Eggman? Up there. Shadow pointed to the egg mobile that hovered high above their location, so high that it couldn't reach them. This isn't over. Eggman told them over the speakers of his personal transport. That was only a prototype. My next mech will be far stronger. Soon all of Remnant will be mine. Eggman declared as he flew away. He is particularly stubborn and dangerous individual. Penny commented. Sonic snorted. Kid, you got no idea. Shouldn't we go after him? Blake questioned. He's long gone, and we don't know where his base is. Knuckles replied. Other than the Ark, which is completely out of reach for us. Don't worry though, we'll get him next time. Sonic assured. As the group began to celebrate their victory, RWBY had her attention drawn to the rubble in the crater. She could have sworn she heard something akin to a chiming or humming noise ringing in her head, one that seemed to draw her in closer. RWBY. Yang noticed her sister already sliding down into the crater, with everyone right behind her. She was already at the pile, seeing a faint green light in the middle of it. Using her hands, she shuffled through the pile before finding the source of said light. She picked up a perfectly cut glowing green emerald in her hand. A Chaos Emerald, Tails observed. Like the ones you told me about. Blake asked Knuckles. Yes, that is one of 7 total. The Echidna confirmed. Their power is how we got here. It's kinda beautiful. Weiss observed. How can something so small be so powerful? Yang asked. It appears to be emanating an energy I am unfamiliar with. Penny observed. It is known as chaos energy. Omega answered. A source of power that can change its purpose depending on the user's intent. Hence the name, huh? Sun noted. RWBY couldn't stop herself from staring at the Chaos Emerald in her hand. There was something about it that drew to her. The more she stared into it, the more she could practically see the energy radiating from it. There was a faint and distant sparkle of light in her eye. Only for Shadow to swipe the Chaos Emerald from her grip, snapping her out of her trance. Wow, what? This is not a toy. It is a powerful and dangerous gem, not to be taken lightly. Shadow told her sternly. Sorry, I don't know what came over me. RWBY rubbed her eyes a bit, the feeling she had now escaping her. With the situation now resolved and all excitement and tension leaving the group, Blake turned towards Weiss and began to speak. Listen, Weiss. Stop. The heiress interrupted her. I meant what I said about the White Fang before. They may have started out differently in the past, but that's no excuse for their actions now. They've stolen from people, they've killed people. It's morally and ethically wrong. She happened to glance towards Shadow, who looked at her with a slight glare before giving a sigh. But, at the same time, what has happened to the faunus in general, even before the White Fang, is equally wrong. That took Blake by surprise as Weiss continued. Being beaten, tortured, caged, even killed just for being different, that's wrong on every level. Weiss said, shivering slightly as she still remembered the photographs Shadow had shown her. And I'm not blind to humanity's own crimes, nor that of the Schnee Dust Company. My father's taken it and led it into a moral gray area, one that could potentially lead to a darker route, much like the White Fang. But I don't want that to happen, I won't let it happen. I acknowledge that humanity is far from perfect and there are horrible and evil people in the world, just as not every faunus is automatically part of the White Fang. My attitude before, while not entirely unwarranted, was also unacceptable, and I'm sorry for what I said. Blake did not expect Weiss to come out and apologize like this. But, now that things were different from yesterday and everyone seemed to have a cooler head, Blake decided to do the same thing. You were right about the White Fang though. She began. They took things way too far, becoming just as monstrous as they claim humanity to be. I didn't want to be a part of that, so I left and I have no intention of going back. I know, your actions here have proved that. Weiss replied. All I ask now, is that when something this big and or personal comes up, you'll come to your teammates, people who want to help you and not some. She looked towards Sun in particular, pausing a bit before choosing her next words carefully. Someone else. Though, personal friends outside our team that we've gotten to know would also count. She looked at Knuckles, who gave a nod of acknowledgement toward her. If you can promise me that, I'll promise to be a bit more open-minded. A small smile formed on Blake's face as she gave a nod. Sounds like a deal. She offered her hand to Weiss, which she accepted with a shake. Sonic snorted slightly. Let me guess, Shadow gave you the whole, all humans suck, speech. He asked Weiss with a knowing grin. He does not pull his verbal punches. Or physical ones for that matter. She looked to see Shadow was already walking away before speeding off with the Chaos Emerald in hand. Hey Blake, RWBY came up to her. Look, I just want you to know too, that whatever happens, I got your back. Both as your leader and as your friend. We all do. Yang stepped up as well. Same with the rest of us. Knuckles added, referring to himself, Amy, Tails, and Sonic. Blake had to rub her eyes a bit, already feeling a bit misty. I know, thanks. Ah, that's cute. Rouge smirked. Got some lovey-dovey friend bonding stuff. She tried to speak with Omega, only to find that he was looking directly at Penny while she stared back at him. My name is Penny, who are you? I am designated E-123 Omega, the ultimate E-Series robot. E-Series. I am afraid I am unfamiliar with that term. Penny said in minor confusion. I was constructed by Eggman. Omega revealed. I refuse to serve him. I will destroy all he has built. Your proclivity to destruction is very impressive. I predict you will be a superior being in the future. Thank you. Penny nodded. And I predict that you and all your friends will be successful in defeating that dangerous Dr. Eggman. Wonder how those two are getting along so well. Tails asked. Who knows? Sonic shrugged. Penny's eyes slowly widened. I must go. She turned around and proceeded to walk away. Wait, Penny, where are you going? RWBY asked. Home, she answered. Okay, thanks for your help today. See you around, pal. Sonic gave her a friendly smile and a finger salute. Penny returned with a smile and a salute of her own before walking away. Is she really walking all the way back to her home? Yang asked questioned. She'll probably catch a taxi or something. Amy said before the group heard some sirens coming their way. Now all we gotta worry about is what to tell the police. I doubt they're gonna be happy about all the collateral damage. Tails gestured to the all but completely destroyed shipping yard around them. Well, we got several eyewitnesses, right? RWBY said hopefully. Right, Sun. She only looked in shock to see Sun was already gone, leaving a dotted silhouette of where he once stood. Somehow, that doesn't surprise me. Knuckles commented with a sigh. My mind has not changed about him being a rapscallion. Weiss said disapprovingly. Blake gave a humorous scoff. Believe it or not, he says he's a student from Haven. You're right, I don't believe it. Weiss replied. Sonic smirked, seeing everyone getting along again always made him happy. And yet, that happiness didn't last long as he glanced upward towards the sky. So Eggman has made his move, huh? And he's working with the White Fang. Yeah, something told him that things were not gonna be easy going forward. Meanwhile, back at Beacon, Professor Ozpin sat in his office, looking at the data pad in his hands, watching a video feed of the massive fight in the shipping yard. He then looked at the message that had been attached to it. The sender went under the name, Kiro, and the message read, Mad Doctor made his move. How will Queen react? What's our move? Ozpin looked with a serious expression. He had now seen what Eggman was capable of with his own eyes. In just a short amount of time, this new player had gained an effective enough study of dust to properly weaponize and use in his own machines. That and the fact that he's made an alliance with the White Fang shows that he is not above employing others to assist him, which matched up with what Sonic and his friends had told him of the Doctor. It would seem that his eternal struggle now had a third player, one that was just as dangerous as she was. With a heavy sigh, Ozpin began to respond to Kiro's message, giving him his next set of instructions. Torchwick limped his way back to the hideout, having been picked up from the water by a single egg gunner during the fight. He glanced upward to see the egg mobile entering through the rooftop. He gave an annoyed sigh before limping back inside himself. Ow, ow, he held his chest, which still ached from Knuckles' attack as he fell back in a chair to rest. How the hell does a little guy like him punch so hard? Ow. Hello there, Roman. Orbot greeted as he and Cubot appeared before him. You appear to be in a state of pain. Really? What tipped you off? Roman said sarcastically. Well, you keep saying, ow, and you're limping. Cubot answered. That's a dead giveaway. It was a rhetorical question. Torchwick exclaimed, only to wince as he held his sides again. Ah, damn, that hurts. I could fetch you some pain medications. Orbot offered. I can get you an ice pack too. Cubot also offered. Save it, Torchwick groaned, but his and the two robots' attention was caught by the door opening again as three individuals walked in. The one at the front was a young woman with fair skin, amber-colored eyes and black hair tied in a ponytail that hung over her shoulder. She wore a short red, long-sleeved, dress with black heels. The two behind here were a young man and another young woman. The former had Caucasian skin with gray hair and eyes, wearing a mostly gray and black outfit, while the later next to him had dark skin with mint green hair and red eyes, wearing a rather revealing top with white and brown pants. Oh hey, Cinder and company. How you been? Cubot greeted friendly, but the woman apparently named Cinder walked past him. We happened to see what occurred at the docks. She revealed. Very interesting. Are you kidding? It was a disaster. Torchwick exclaimed. We didn't get even a speck of dust from all that. Working with those mutts was your idea, by the way. Yours and that crazy doctor pal of yours. And you'll keep working with them as long as we tell you. Cinder told him, producing a flame in her hands as her eyes glowed. Now, we're all on the same side here. Orbot tried to diffuse any sort of tension. You don't want to make the boss mad with infighting, do you? Don't worry, little robot. Cinder said in a sinisterly assuring tone. I'm sure the results of our endeavors will be most satisfactory. Eggman walked from his personal transport into his main control center, which had quite the setup fitting for the Mad Doctor, plenty of computers and advanced pieces of equipment located all over. Of course, his most advanced and deadly creation, Metal Sonic, was also present. The deadliest badnik appeared to be showing a holographic recording of Team Sonic, RWBY, Dark and their allies' recent battle against the Egg Cerberus. So, what did you think of my performance? Not too shabby, huh? Something else slowly left the shadows of the room to reveal itself. It appeared to be a jellyfish-like creature, its main body resembling that of a black crystal ball with red mist inside. It had bony plates on the outside as well, with some red tentacles coming from the bottom. It was quite the flashy performance, Doctor. What can I say? I like a little fair. Eggman said. But it was also twofold. I got a chance to properly test dust in my mechs, the two work well in concert. I may not even need a Chaos Emerald for my next project. But also, you got a chance to see Sonic and his friends in action for yourself. I will admit, he is among the strongest individuals I've seen. But he'll fall just like everyone else, but I must question your carelessness in losing one of those emeralds, especially given this, chaos control, ability you told me of. If you're worried about them taking the ark back, don't. Eggman replied as he sat down casually on his chair. I've already got the other 6 up there powering a special shield that neutralizes all forms of chaos energy. They can't use it to teleport back up there. And if they decided to use it to power a special kind of spaceship, my entire egg fleet is guarding the station as we speak. They'll be shot down in sight. The loss of 1 Chaos Emerald is somewhat unfortunate, but it's not that big a loss. If you believe it to be, but just know you are responsible should something happen. Yeah. Eggman waved off. Now it's my turn to question something. Are you sure it's absolutely necessary to use the White Fang? I'm not prejudiced towards them or anything, I just find it unnecessary. I could level all of Beacon myself if I wanted to. Heck, I could use the Eclipse Cannon right now. We have discussed this, Doctor. Your resources and technology would indeed deal a great blow to Remnant. But it would also give them a common enemy to rally behind, and we need them divided. And as I've told you, Sonic has an annoying habit of bringing people together. Eggman argued. Heck, some of his closest allies were once his enemies. He could easily unite Remnant against me, and later you should he find out about you. And he is capable doing that on his own, he has some pretty smart friends watching his back. He can't. Ozpin won't let him. Are you sure about that? Ozpin could see Sonic's potential and just decide to tell him. He does have the potential to actually stop you, as in permanently. Eggman advised. Ozpin doesn't trust anyone, not even those most devoted to him. Only himself. Everything must be done his way, he believes he alone must shepherd the people of Remnant. Should someone take that duty away from him, or even prove to be better at it, he will sabotage their efforts. Sounds familiar, Eggman said with a chuckle. Any attempt Sonic will make at saving Remnant will be hindered by Ozpin, which will lead to conflict between their respective groups. And that will only aid us in the end. When it comes to raw power, Sonic and Shadow each alone have the advantage over Ozpin and his little Illuminati. Eggman pointed out. Ozpin has the stronger influence, he could turn all of Remnant against them if he desired. Power alone is insignificant if the world stands against you. Eggman chuckled. And that's why our partnership is going to work. We have the power and the influence. So, tell me, Salem, do you regret this little alliance of ours? Of course not, Doctor. It has opened so many possibilities for the both of us. Standing on the balcony of her dark and unholy fortress, overlooking the desolate and monster-infested wasteland that was her home, was a lone figure. She appeared to be female with a humanoid shape, wearing a black and red dress that stretched all the way down to her ankles, with a thin cape of the same color scheme. She carried a crystal ball in her right hand that allowed her to communicate with her newfound partner. Her skin and hair were pale white, black veins visible on her arms and even her face, which carried a smile of pure and unrelenting evil complete with glowing red eyes and black irises. Sonic the Hedgehog has faced and defeated many powerful adversaries in the past, but he has never faced anything like me before. These were the words of the Queen of the Grim, known only to a few and feared by all those that do know her, who even hesitate to speak her very name. Salem. And this at the end of part 3 this what if. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.